Sir, you're charged with especially aggravated kidnapping. You're also charged with aggravated assault, and you're charged with theft of a firearm worth less than $2,500.
You're talking about stuff that is not relevant.
Hello and welcome to the Court of Public Opinion. I am the recovery addict, and boy, do I have a case for you today.
Why is the dog chewing on this guy?
I think they have got the wrong guy there.
Got the wrong guy, and the dog was biting him.
He roughened him up quite a bit. There's a lawsuit.
9 out of 10 judges prefer watching the Recovery Addict live stream in their courtroom.
The fireworks are not done.
Now we're getting commentary on the case. Dati mihi Anglican boys, service like that.
Literally not true.
I didn't ask you to interrupt me.
Order in the court, order in the court. Everyone please come in, take your seats. Welcome, good to be back. It's been a long time, it's been an hour. It's been a whole hour and a little bit more, I apologize. I'm a little bit late today, but rank has its privileges. What can I say? Here we are, we're back with another trial. As we're starting another one, it's just getting started here. We're super excited. It actually starts here in just a minute. Jury selection was, I believe, in progress last I heard. So timing's a little up in the air. We're not sure exactly when it's going to begin. But this is the case of Brandon, and we're still going to have to figure out how to say his last name. Is it Castiglione or Castiglione or Castiglione? We'll figure it out. One thing I will bet is that I'm not the only person that mispronounces his last name. That's my bet. Look, I've gotten tall again. There we go. Okay. I'm betting that I'm not the only person that mispronounces his last name. I am here. Welcome back. Good to have you here. Let's see who all is in chat. We've got a few people. Let me turn this off and turn this to there. Get ready. All right. Here we go. I've been working the phones, working the email, sending in documents, requests, media registration forms to New Hampshire. Lots of fun stuff during the break. It's been very, very busy. I'll say that. As it stands right now, I'm waiting for approval. If the WebEx works, I need to have approval first from the judge to restream. So we've put a request in through the channels to see if that's a possibility. There's also the possibility that WebEx will not be live during this because of the pool coverage. So we're going to go with what we can. If it's pool coverage, we're going to use fair use and provide quite a bit of additional information, content, quality, updates, questions, you name it, to comply with fair use, and we'll use what's available that way. We are back. Have an easy day. It's good to be here. I did update the Discord page. Ooh, Meg, look at that. There's a super sticker. Thank you so much, Meg. Appreciate the little lemon head.
Meg Osborne just sent a super sticker with 5.
Thank you, Meg. Love it. Looks great. I think there was a gifted membership as well. Let's see who that was from. I think that was from Stephen Blevins, who keeps doing this. Stephen. Let's see if I can put you up on screen here. Where'd it go? There's Meg. I'm not sure if I can scroll that far back. Wait for it. There it is. Oh, got it. One of the benefits of not having 10,000 people in chat is I don't lose all the chats quite so quickly. But Stephen, thank you very much for gifting another membership to the channel. And it looks like that one went to Groovy Jill. Congratulations, Groovy Jill, on that. Good to have you here as a member. Please take your seat.
I'm not a camel.
Castiglione. Man, that's going to be a tough one. Be kind. Are you fairly confident in your in your pronunciation there? Tammy says, have you poured your water yet today? I have a new mug. I have a pink mug. It's not really new. It's the old pink mug, but we're going to use that today. And I'll do it now. There we go. Thank you for the reminder, Tammy. I've poured it now, and I won't dump it on my computer this time. I am a big fan of water.
Dead horse go unbeaten.
Let's see. Hopefully his own lawyers can say his last name. Okay, this is interesting. You say his own lawyers because I've been doing some reading about Brandon a little bit. And Brandon at one time was pro se. He represented himself before the judge. He actually, I was reading one of the documents from court. Let's see. He filed this, 9/30 of 2020. So it's been a little while. This case, I believe the crime was committed in 2019. It's just now working its way through the court system. Obviously, the pandemic and everything else might have slowed that down. But he filed this little juicy gem. Let me see if I can get this up on the screen. Hold tight. Buffer comments on screen. Is that what you want? Oh, that's like that. Got it, Thomas. Actually, if you want to test really quickly, do the chat command really quickly, Thomas.
There's a lawsuit.
I think I figured out the problem, and it should work right now. Let's see if you do the chat command. See if it should disappear off the screen if you do it properly. Of course, it only works for Thomas. Let's see if it works here. Give it a second. If too many people do it, then it causes problems. Okay, wait for it. I thought I had fixed it, but it definitely is not. Let's try one more time. We're going to make him disappear. And Thomas, do chat one more time. See if it just turns it on. Leaves it on. Or 6-Volt just did it. Never mind.
For the record, I don't consent to that name.
It's not working. Okay. I'll have to go back in and fix that, but for now on the buffer's going to work for now. That's how we're going to handle it. Okay, so let me bring this little juicy gem over here. We don't need that page anymore. New Hampshire's a fun little state, by the way. I sort of like their approach to media. We might have to visit here more often. Okay, let's see. I need screen 3. Get rid of my... Okay. Well, that's going to have to be how it works. Okay, so here we go. So we have this nice little handwritten letter. State of New Hampshire. They provided the paper for him for the Superior Court in Rockingham. Is that what it is? Rockingham County. Motion for dismissal of charges. This is the case number for Brandon. Brandon Castiglione or Castiglione. I still don't know how to do that. How to say that. Hang on, let me clear that off. It says, I am requesting that the charges that have been filed against me be dismissed for the following reasons. Lack of clear and convincing evidence, lack of probable cause. In the totality of the circumstance, there is a lack of evidence regarding the alleged offense that I am being charged with. I am filing this motion to have the charges that have been brought forth against me be dismissed on grounds of lack of evidence.
Are we going to address subject matter
Signed,
jurisdiction?
Squiggle. So this is the last document. Apparently, it did not work, is what I'm saying. Apparently, that was not enough to get his case thrown out of court. Did I have that on the screen properly for you guys? Did you see that? Possibly. Let's see. I missed the Weather Watch. Weather Watch, were you live? I was busy doing paperwork. I saw there was a tornado. There's a tornado thing going on or something. So. Please stay safe. It wasn't ringing in my ear, so I just focused on my homework. Dinah says, you are the best place to be. Thank you so much, Ari, for the new family. Love you all so much. You make my days so much brighter. Thank you so much, Dinah. I appreciate you being here. Thank you for being such a bright spot for everyone as well. Okay. Jim Bob, more pronunciation guides. Castiglione. Jim Bob, I'm liking that. It's sort of one syllable, right? You don't like Castiglione. It's more like Castiglione. It's like a Castiglione thing. You know, if you could clap it, it's just one clap, right? Like going back to grade school. Castiglione. No E on the end. Castiglione. Dusty Den is going for the silent G. More of a Y sound. Maybe we should vote. The E is silent. Proper pronunciation is Castiglione. We have a lot of proper pronunciations, and they do not agree. What is this trial about? Unfortunately, Creative B, it's another murder trial. This one involves a church. One of the, I guess, the elders in the church is deceased. We have the defendant who is suspected of being the reason that the other man is deceased. I believe a gunshot was involved, and there was also another shooting at the church, not connected but sort of related. There's a lot going on. Homeschool syllables. Yes. Hey, Jay, thank you. Jimmy Geiger says, I'm a new subscriber here. Love this channel. Thank you so much. Or love this chance even. A chance at being at the channel. It's pronounced BC. Thank you. Thank you, Danny. Danny was first in chat, by the way. I forgot to mention that. Danny followed very, very closely by Lost Souls Paranormal. It was almost as if the couple came through at the same time. It was wonderful. So Danny, thank you very much. Good luck owning the internet. First in chat gets that privilege or the penalty, depending on how you view it, depending on what happens during the day, of course. But that's where we're going there. So we're waiting for a live stream, which so far we do not have. I wonder why he didn't say he didn't do it and that he was innocent. Yeah, it's like all he said was, you don't have any proof. You can't prove it was me. So I believe that's what the case is going to boil down to. This is going to be a whodunit. A whodunit. And just because you caught me with, blood on my hands doesn't mean I was the one who caused the blood. I think that's what the defense is going to be. I am seeing a delay on some of the big channels that we're watching as well. Let's see, they're saying 63 minutes. It's going to be a little bit. I think we're waiting for the jury selection to be done and for the trial to begin. We're expecting opening statements this afternoon. Lost Souls Paranormal says, Team Austin, you're fine with him winning. That's awesome. Where's the trial at? What state? This is in New Hampshire, Picky. We have not covered a New Hampshire trial, to my knowledge. I can't remember the last time or if we ever have covered one from New Hampshire. But reading through their laws, which is something that I like doing, reading through that, their media guide, the New Hampshire Judicial Branch has just a ton of information regarding that. I've contacted the communications department for the courts to get access to all of New Hampshire's courts. There are different rules for their Supreme Court, their Superior Court, which is what this one is going to be in, their District Division Court, their Probate Court, as well as their Family Division Court. So I have to work within all those and make sure I know where I'm at that way. But that being said, I know there's a WebEx out there that was live from this courtroom. But I have to follow the court's proceedings, and it specifically says, do not record the proceedings unless you have court permission. So I specifically can't. Other people do. I'll use fair use on their stuff until we can get our stuff set up. But it's nice to at least be, it appears that my application for media credentials in the state of New Hampshire for the judicial system is about to be approved. So that would be a good thing. All right. Let's see. Let's keep that over there. Let's jump over here. Let's see if we can pull up a couple stories about this trial. Wait for it.
I'm not a
Good
cat.
stuff here. This is a tough name.
Alex stole it.
Gaston. Is it like Gaston from like Beauty and the Beast? Is that how the name is pronounced? Gaston? Only Gaston? So I'm reviewing some of the information some of the other guys have assembled here. There looks like there might be three key players, the victim being Luis Garcia. There's a defendant as well as a possible other suspect. Man. Man, this is... The suspect has prior criminal charges. That's interesting. Okay. Let's dig into some news stories here to see what we've got. So Brandon was found praying over the victim, who was a minister. But he might not be the guy who did it, even though he has a bit of a record. Yeah, I cannot wait. These opening statements are going to be fantastic. Let's see. Let's find out some brief information about Brandon. So Lewis was 60, shot and killed allegedly by Brandon, who was 28. New England Pentecostal Ministries was the church. Lewis was a pastor, and the pastor was shot at the pastor's home. Supposedly, Castiglione shot him in the neck. Brandon attended the church, the same church as Garcia was a pastor at, and they often prayed together. So Garcia's stepson says that Brandon barged into Castiglione's father's wedding 12 days after the incident, and Garcia's stepson shot the bishop, the bride, and Castiglione's father, but they all lived and made a full recovery. This is bizarre. This was like a revenge shooting. So Garcia's stepson goes into the wedding a week and a half later, shoots up the wedding, shoots the bishop, the bride, and Castiglione's father. They all live, so he's going to face trial. That's Dale Holloway. Wow. So it's like a family thing. This is just crazy. This is going to be good, you guys. This is going to be some good stuff. Sounds like a soap opera. You can't make these things up. The plot thickens for sure. I believe it mentioned Pentecostal is the flavor of religion. Yeah, it's supposed to be on right now. They're waiting for the jury selection to get done, and they can't broadcast the WebEx currently to show where we're at. They were working on some other stuff. It is a whodunit. Apparently, there's someone else who might be a suspect in this. Sounds like revenge. Yeah, well, you've got the second shooting that was like revenge for the first one, or for revenge for having arrested the suspect in the first one. That usually doesn't go really, as a strong point to say, hey, look, you guys, I'm innocent. And if you don't think so, my kids will carry out, vengeance on you. That's generally not the way it goes. What about this dude's arrest for getting busted, having meth lab in his dad's house, unless I read it wrong? There was that. Katrina, I believe there's some prior drug charges that may weigh into this. But you realize that church...
Let no dead horse go unbeaten.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Harbootlian. Church is not for the perfect, right? Church is for sinners. So the fact that someone who's attending church had a prior history is not surprising. It's actually very common that you have somebody who may have had a brief run-in with the law, had some rough times, be participating in church services on the regular, which appears that Brandon was. Why did Brandon shoot Garcia in the first place? Dodie, I guess this is the question, is if Brandon shot Garcia in the first place. Allegedly, he shot him in the neck, but when the people showed up, he seemed to be just hunched over the body praying. We'll have to figure out, DNA. We're going to have to see if the weapon was recovered. It's going to be Castiglione.
Bring the jury.
If I just pronounce it quickly, like I know what I'm talking about, will you guys just let me have it however I want it? Castiglione sounds good. I'm hitting all the syllables except for the E on the end. Castiglione. I just can't do that guttural yon. The wedding was like 2 hours before the pastor's funeral at the same church, which I find weird. Why would they schedule it like that? I don't know. Family crimes are the whole famdangly. family crimes are really weird. We watched that in Ohio when we had the Pike murders. That involved the whole family as well. Not knowing much about the trial, in my opinion, makes it more interesting, says Mammy. We're going to learn. The opening statements are really what's going to give us the insight into the trial, because we get to approach this a lot like jurors do, where I realize some of you, as this happened in 2019, some of you are saying, yeah, I remember when this happened. It was on the news. We've been following the story all along. You guys are light years ahead of us, but also we're coming in as completely unbiased jurors, where it's just new information, and we just get to hear the evidence as it's presented. Obviously, we know a little bit more already, but correct. All right, there's our fingers pointing at another person. Half-day break isn't long enough, says Luke. Hopefully, it's going to be a soft start, though, not really a really heavy trial. It's going to be a little juicy, says Danny. I'm sure the E is silent, Aunt Mel, and thanks for the tip on this. This sounds fascinating. I'm intrigued by it. Wagner trial is way too much for me to handle. Dusty Den, part of the problem of the Wagner trial, the Pike murders, whatever the name was on that one, the coverage was awful. The audio was awful. The camera angle, I think we got one camera angle, and it was terrible. It was difficult to watch, and it was so monotonous. I think they had to introduce and authenticate every piece of evidence fully, separately. They couldn't say we're going to introduce items, 101 through 275. They had to do every single one separately, and it was days. It was days of just the same words over and over and over. It was painful. Hope they come out swinging. When does the trial start today? We're waiting. We're hoping that the opening statements start this afternoon. They were impaneling a jury. They started yesterday doing that, and I think they've got it. Interesting thing, they're going for 12 jurors with 11 alternates, and I haven't seen the time frame they expect this trial to last, but 11 alternates would indicate that it would be a little bit longer of a trial. Typically, the shorter trials don't need as many alternates, but they've almost got one for one. They could almost replace the entire jury through the course of the trial and still be good. We need the sound of the guy yelling, "You rot in prison," to Letitia yesterday when she was being let out. I did not grab that sound. I didn't hear that. If you want a real challenge, that Young Thug Rico murder trial is already off the rails. I don't even know if they have a jury yet. Mr. Opertorso, we picked that up early on, and our first day, someone Zoom bombed their Zoom meeting, and on screen we got a video that should not be shown in any public setting. That was highly inappropriate, and that really drove our coverage of Young Thug to a quick halt. We stopped the stream. I had to delete everything because that violates YouTube's terms of service. It was no bueno. Yeah, luckily this does not involve a child murder. Those ones are extremely difficult, Ivan. Scratch his chin, Godfather style. And you come to me on this day of my daughter's Pentecostal wedding. That was an awful accent. I'm sorry. I apologize to all those who I imitated and offended. I was reading about this case. I'm so late. It's way too confusing keeping people straight. Right. We have to have the actors. And at the very beginning of some like crime videos, it's like, here are the players. You have on one side the defendant, the victim, the family, the other suspect. We need that, and we are going to get that during the opening statements. That's something I'm super excited we're going to get. So let's hold on to that audio. That should happen as soon as it comes in. 11 alternates sounds crazy. I've never seen that many alternates. The last trial I thought was a lot with Letitia, and they had 6 alternates, which was quite a few. They only ended up burning one of them. Samantha, we're all impartial jurors here. I can do the voices for you, says Dinah. Let's see. My brother has the contract for the flooring for Margaritaville at Fort Myers Beach. He's going to make good bucks at that job. Little Miss, that's awesome. Little Margaritaville. Maybe he can get some discounted rates for all of us to go visit. Do we know the judge in this trial, or are we meeting a new one? New judge for me. Let me look at the court records here just really quickly. on the docket. Let's see who was that one. Let me find where it was. Hold on one second. Media, frequently requested cases, criminal, Brandon. It says Rockingham County Superior Court. Let's see, where's the latest order? We want results by date filed. That's the trial dates. Okay. See, the clerk of court is Jennifer M. Hagar. We've got jury selection on May 8th, and the jury trial the weeks of May 8th and May 14th. So they've got it penciled in for 2 weeks. The court case we're following right now is just barely starting. This is the state of New Hampshire versus Brandon M. Castiglione. He's accused of murder. And it's a murder in a church, or a murder of a preacher, a minister, an elder in a church, a Pentecostal church. 11 alternates is a ton of alternates. I wonder where they sit, honestly. Tangled Crochet says, dang, I didn't realize we were back with RA. We're back. We're back. This is a brand new case. I'd like to hear RA do an Italian accent from actual Italy. Maybe he can do that better. I cannot. I am so bad at accents. I end up offending both the people I am trying to sound like and the people I sound like, which generally are not the same. I'm right down the road from you in South Carolina. Love your channel. Thank you, Christy Gibson. It's awesome. You're not far away. We share a border. The name of the trial is in the link you clicked. Yes, it is. It's called, well, I called it the preacher murder trial. I'm not sure if it's actually a preacher. Some churches have the different positions of the churches go by a little bit different names. So he might be known as a minister or an elder or a pastor or a preacher. But we'll find out their preferred name, and we will switch to that, as we like to be respectful that way. No shortage of business for you. Pretty scary, though. Unfortunately, Steve, it's like being a mortician, really. As more and more people are being born, more and more people are going to die. It just happens. There's a correlation between the number of births and the number of deaths, meaning that pretty much everyone who's born is going to die. So it's a good business to be in if you don't mind the content. The murder of a priest. Mr. Upper Torso says, I'm just excited to see a legit RICO trial. They are rare. They are, and I love it. It was a bit of a circus at the beginning with like 20 some odd defendants, and then they all start taking deals and saying, yeah, I'll testify against that guy, sure. But I think Young Thug is holding out. And then you've also had like in that trial, you've got like drugs being handed to the defendant, like in open court, guy walking up, handing him something, slipping him a pill, and the bailiff caught it. Good stuff. Judge Ruoff, who said that? Judge David Ruoff. Is it Ruoff or Roof? It's a pastor in this case, I believe.
Horse go unbeaten.
What religion was the church? I believe it was Pentecostal, so it's a Christian denomination. The preacher trial is what we're waiting for. Yes, we're expecting it to start. It might be a few minutes here. There's about 45 minutes is what we're expecting, but it could be longer because they're just seating the jury, and the feed won't start until the jury is seated. No one gets out of here alive, says Ivan. What blows my mind is he was caught praying over the victim's body. Okay, so Toxic. What happens if this guy happened to be there, or happened to come in right after the murder, and shows up right after the murder and rushes to meet his friend who's clearly, gravely wounded, is then covered in blood and is praying over the body when other observers come by and are like, look, what just happened? We heard a gunshot. We came running. He also came running. but nobody is there with his alibi. I mean, this could be a scenario. We're going to hear in the opening statements what they say could happen. But what if he just rushed in to help and was in the wrong place and everyone's like, oh, it must have been you? Especially if the gun's there. I mean, would the DNA, would the fingerprints, would he have been there for a fight? Would he have struggled over the gun? That, you know, it'll be interesting to see what happens. A profound statement. I don't know what I said, but apparently it had great impact on you, Michelle. Don, yes, the court TV has said the Vallow verdict will be visual and audio. I find it a little ironic that Court TV is announcing that. I think everyone else should announce that before Court TV gets to, because they're the reason they don't have any visual coverage of that trial. So hopefully they won't do a tight close-up zoom of Lori Vallow's eyes during that portion. So this trial is a whodunit. Who is on trial? Brandon Castiglione is on trial. Verity, I'm doing well. Today's a good day. Ashley says, my sister is a mortician. I had a friend growing up in high school, and I mean he's still my friend, but we were friends through elementary, junior, and high school. When he took a job right after he got married, he worked in a mortuary, and it wasn't just that he worked in the mortuary. He rented a room in the mortuary, so his family lived in the mortuary, and part of the arrangement of the rental was that, hey, at night when the phone rings, you have to answer it, and you have to go pick up new customers. So you answer the phone during the night, and then you get this discount or free rent. All you have to do is just answer the phone and just drive the car, and take the body bag, and pick up the new customer and bring him back, and then we'll take care of it from there. So he wasn't a mortician, but he was just like it's sort of like reverse Uber for corpses is what he did. I'm not sure if that's the polite way to say it, but he had some stories, just some crazy stories. Might have to get him on here. Maybe that's the thing, reverse Uber for corpses. We should Google that. Dream job is to be a funeral director. You have to be very somber, Julie. And I conducted exactly one funeral. I was asked to conduct a funeral for a gentleman who basically did not have any family, and the only friend he had was his caretaker. When he passed away, she reached out to me, just said, I'm devastated, I don't know what to do. Could you at least come to the funeral and be there, and could you say a few words or something like that? And I'm like, sure, I can try. I want to support you. Hang on, a sneeze is coming on. It's very important. Gesundheit. So she calls me up and says, can you come to the funeral? Here's where it's at. And we're like, sure, no problem. And then she calls back and says, wait, can you bring a tie? Can you bring a tie? He doesn't own a tie, and we want him to be buried in a tie, so he's looking nice. I'm like, sure. And she's like, and can you bring a pair of socks too? I'm like, sure. So we'll get him a pair of my socks and a tie. And so we brought those, and so he was able to wear a nice tie and a pair of socks when he was placed in the casket. And I hadn't seen this. I gave her the tie and everything, and it was done in the other room. And it's just like us and her, me and my buddy and her in the room, and they wheel the casket in. They're like, all right, you got like 30 minutes, okay? So do whatever you're gonna do, and then we're done. And so I'm like, okay, what? I guess I'll stand up and say some nice words. I don't know the gentleman. I know the lady who had called me a little bit. And I stand up and I walk up to the casket. It's open casket. And I look in the casket. And I'm not trying to be disrespectful at all. But the gentleman in the casket was the spitting image of Mr. Burns from The Simpsons. Like spitting image. It looked like I was looking at Mr. Burns from The Simpsons. And he was wearing my tie. And at that moment, as somber as I was supposed to be, I could not be somber. And I just bust out with the biggest belly roll laugh. It's when you start laughing and you cannot stop. That was what happened. And it was like everything was so triggering. I was trying so hard to fight it. And the more you try not to laugh, the worse it gets. And pretty soon you're doing the pig snort noise. You're, everything as you're laughing. And yeah, so here I am. And of course, this lady is mortified. this lady is just mortified, and I'm like, I'm sorry, and I'm trying to like wrap up my laughter with like, actually, it's a celebration of life. It was the worst tie-in possible, but here is Mr. Poor Mr. Burns, may he rest in peace. He's still wearing my tie and my socks. I hope he forgives me, but I am not cut out to be a funeral director. I am just not cut out for that. Every word of that story is true. Every single word of that. That happened over in England. And oh yeah, he had the other stuff. Kitty kitty bang bang. He had the other stuff. It's just he didn't have a tie to a proper tie, and they didn't bring any socks for him, and so he has my socks and tie on. And I'm fine with him keeping them. It's not like I want them back. Yes, I tried to tie it in. It did not work. No, this is before I met my wife. What did your friend say to you after it was over? She thanked us. She really did. I don't know exactly. I did talk for a few minutes and talk about life and death and the grander scheme of things. The circle of life type. Not really that we all die and then something eats us type thing. It wasn't like the forests, the safari circle of life, so much as more from a spiritual perspective. But I felt so bad for just like snorting laughing at this guy and the whole time. So I turned away from him, and then as I'm trying to talk, every time I talk, I'd unintentionally sort of like glance back because I'm referencing, because I'm standing in front of the casket talking to the two people who were listening. So I'd glance back, and there's Mr. Burns, sitting there, looking just like Mr. Burns, and it would trigger that laughter again at the same time. It was so bad. It was so bad. So if you have it in you to be a funeral director, Brooklyn P probably does a fantastic job. But yeah, anyway, I don't know how we ended up on that story when we're waiting for a murder trial. But there it is. There's story time with RA. Oh man. You be chilling. I don't know what you just walked in on, but welcome. Good to have you here. Don't hire Scott as a funeral director. Seriously. Yeah, my friend that's what he did. He would go around and he would pick up the bodies in the body bag, and he'd drive like the hearse, because what else are you going to pick him up in? A minivan?
Taking it easy.
So he'd show up in the hearse, and sometimes he'd need a hand, and so he had people he could call and be like, hey,
about stuff that is not relevant.
If you get a call from him like 2 o'clock, and then it's like, hey, you got like 20 minutes? Like, sure, what's up? He's like, I need you to do something. He's literally calling you in the middle of the night to move a body. I mean, how many good friends can you call up and just say, hey, can you help me move a body tonight? I know it's short notice, but I've really got to get this one taken care of. And so he would do that. He'd call up and say, hey, I need a hand. We're a little short staffed today. I've got to get rid of a body, and we've got 2 flights of stairs and no elevator. So
bring the jury.
Yeah, for me that was a tough one. Couldn't do that kind of work. Yeah, it's a good friend. A good friend is one who will help you move a body. But he had all the permits. It was actually legal, and Matthew Harris can tell you about this. You actually have to have permits in almost every state, I think, to move a deceased body. You have to, be working with the mortuary and have all that permits in place. Otherwise, big trouble. Yeah, you can't do the whole like weekend at Bernie's thing and just sort of drop them off on your own, because then there are charges involved. And as Letitia found, she faced those charges for moving a body. Obviously, the way she did it was even more highly inappropriate. But even with good intentions, moving a body, you can face charges.
Murdoch stole it.
All right, what audiobook do you want? Obviously, I wouldn't be able to read it live, but maybe I can get you your own personal recording. Or sorry, hold your horses. I called myself RA. What book genre should I read? We have the live feed from the court set up to start coming. We'll get audio as soon as the feed comes in live, but we don't have the feed yet, so just hold on. The trial is supposed to start. It's supposed to start this afternoon. They're slating it. They're saying that it's going to start in 35 minutes, so we have a little bit of time. We can answer a few questions. Hey, LA Corner Shop closed. Anyone know who sells similar stuff? LA Coroner Shop? Is that Corner Shop or LA Coroner Shop? And what sort of stuff do they sell, Lisa? Just like body bags and toe tags. I mean, how much? I don't know what else you need. Having never really worked in that profession, what are the tools of the trade? I mean, if I was a locksmith, I would have like lock picks and spare locks and deadbolts and keys and things like that, blanks. But what tools does a coroner need? What bag do they bring? Like, okay, let me get out my tools. Maybe that gets a little dark. Maybe I shouldn't go there. We need makeup. Yes, that's a good one. I had not thought about that. Coroner merch. My other suit is a body bag. I mean, what sort of sayings would you have on the hoodie?
You're talking about stuff that is not relevant.
I do that a lot. Thank you, B. Court TV just sent notification for this trial. Are they saying half an hour? Armpit thermometers. Oh, Lisa. Yeah, the medical examiner stuff. Bunch of novelty stuff. I think the toe tags would be a hit. Man, yeah, there's a few things I don't want to know. Vicks to rub under your nose. I would totally buy that hoodie, says Julie. My other suit is a body bag. The past funeral I attended felt more like a family reunion because the last time they saw each other was at the last funeral. Man, that's... I've been to funerals that are different. And obviously... The way a family mourns, and I'm not trying to make light of this, the way a family mourns is unique to their situation, their experience in life, the relationship they had with the decedent. It's very interesting. There are some that are extremely somber, that the definition of mourning, just anguish of soul, sometimes even unrestrained, that just is painful to watch. I mean, look at Al in the victim statements from yesterday. I'm talking about that, just the raw emotion. And then at the same time, you've got other people who are almost in the same setting. The facts of the age of the victim and the condition and how they died and things like that can be different, but they're in the same situation, losing a loved one, generally without notice or warning, and their behavior is completely different. And it's interesting as a people watcher, which I like to consider myself, to look at that and see how different people face that and why they handle it differently. But some are extremely respectful of the space around the casket, and others I've seen entire families huddled around doing the selfie picture with the decedent, and not in this disrespectful way. Although I personally feel if I had done that, I would be disrespectful. But I think in them doing it, it was not. But just interesting. It's a little morbid curiosity to watch people at funerals. 3 minutes to start per Court TV. Thank you, Mimi of 2. I've asked before, but how many blue button-ups do you own? 2 short sleeves, 3 long sleeves, and they're varying shades of blue. A couple of repeats, so I can wear this shirt 2 days in a row and have it be 2 different shirts, like this model. I have some that are actually different sizes. Like I have an extra large and a double X of the same shirt. Our corner shop's open to the public. I want to party when I go. Live it up, says Samantha. You calm them, we embalm them. Embalming machine and fluid. I have zero need for this. Zero need, nor any desire for it. You kill them, we chill them. Yeah, you need a large freezer, like a walk-in refrigerator or something like that. Man, Ivan, you're similar to me. I would find that disrespectful, personally. But I have to say that the family that I saw do this, it was not disrespectful. The family members that took the selfie and arranged people in the picture for the selfie were the closest family members. They were respectful all the way throughout. There was no disrespect there. So that's what surprised me, because I would be slightly offended, but at the same time, that was how they were celebrating life. Or celebrating the life of the decedent. Hum along if you can't sing along. Good to see you with the new color next to your name. Appreciate your continued support. Thank you very much. Your reserved seat is still reserved for
Now
you.
Murdoch stole it.
Why do you always call them button downs? I always keep the top button down. So I guess they're button ups because I button everything else up except for the top button. Why does the top button get the credit, Jamie, if it's not doing any of the work? Okay.
I was kicked back, taking
the
it
minister's
easy.
stepson. Scarlett O'Hara, is this? I didn't think there was a relationship other than an acquaintance type thing between the decedent and the descendant or the defendant on this one. Come along if you can't sing along. This community is the best one I've been part of in 32 years of internet access. Real talk. That's very, very little preparation goes into some of the stories I tell you. And sometimes I get halfway through a story and I'm thinking, I really shouldn't be telling this. I really shouldn't be telling this. Oh, man. Michael Rogers, is it going to come to all? It's going to come to all of us one day. It will. I do think that in general, death is something that we fear because it's unknown. But it's, I don't know. I think it shouldn't be. Speaking of mugs, the blue one used yesterday, was that light blue or blue? That was light blue. It's still here. I have not washed it yet. I'm that much of a slob.
I'm not a camel.
And now I have my pink one next to it. Now you're fine, I love your stories.
I'm not a cat.
The Victorians used to put the deceased in a chair and the entire family was photographed like a portrait. It's the last chance. I mean, when will you get another chance to get the whole family together? Dale Holloway is the other likely suspect. Now Dale, Shireen, Dale is the one who did the shooting 12 days later, right? Where he went back into the church at the wedding and shot 3 people, and they all survived. When are we getting the double-handle mugs? I'm looking for a source for these, Kath. And it's going to say, I think it's going to say Boots mug on one and Backpacks mug on the other side. So both sides will be printed. Let's see. The North and the South also approach funerals totally differently. I went to a funeral quite recently where the mortuary that was providing the service at the church was separate from the church, and so they held it in the church, and the family and the vibe of the family and the communication, the atmosphere was very different from the vibe that the mortuary employees were giving out. And it was interesting to see the contrast as the mortuary was approaching it with a very somber, all black, sad face type situation, and the family was, although sad, was more optimistic about life, about life after death, and it seems the contrast between the two was quite interesting. Okay, I need to get rid of this mug now that I've told you I have a dirty mug here. Can you guys hold tight for just a second? Won't go anywhere. I don't think trial's going to start anytime. Well, it says 26 minutes here. Yeah, so hold tight for just a minute. We'll have Court in a minute. Gabby Gabs, just realized this is my first month membership. I think I love y'all. Virtual hugs. Awesome. Thank you for the first month anniversary membership comment, and thanks for your continued support, Gabby.
Consent to that name.
Okay, we're going to get back to the mortuary stuff in 1 second. I've got to get rid of this dirty mug. Hang on 1 second. Court TV has liftoff. Are they pronounced? Are they? I'll see what they're doing. Sixfold Bus, thank you very much. Appreciate your continued support and for your hard work as a mod. Doing a great job at that. Let's see what we're doing here. Okay, all they have is a picture of the seal on the wall. Can I cover Brian Walsh? That's going to be a while, Stephanie, right? He's the one that that killed his wife, and there was no evidence of the body found, other than they found like some blood evidence, I believe, but her body was disposed of. The chair looks comfy. It is so comfy, too comfy at times. I sometimes almost fall asleep in it. Almost. You've never really caught me asleep. Let's see. Do we have any audio from court? No audio from court yet. Let's see. Let me get rid of the motion to dismiss. We'll drag this over here. Still nothing there. So we'll keep an eye on that. And we'll keep that off. Keep this ready. Okay, we're good. The chair is very comfy. Let's see. I used to have a bunch of old photos with my ancestors with caskets and old frames with beveled glass. My father stole them from me when I asked him to hold on to the army chest they were kept in, and he kept it. Little miss. Oh, no. That's awful. Missed morning, but here now. That's all right, Linda. We had a sort of calm morning, and then we decided to follow this trial, as it seems to line up perfectly with what we're looking for. What about the BK trial? Yes. Actually, we have a hearing in that one in a couple of weeks, probably right after this trial's over. There's going to be a hearing in that trial, which we're looking forward to. But we'll definitely follow Brian Koberger. I don't know. I may even want to be in Idaho for that one, depending on when it is. The two I'd want to be there for is Sarah Boone and Brian Koberger, I think, right now. Let's see, any motive on this trial? I have not heard anything as far as motive. We know that the defendant would worship at that same church, and that he had prayed with the decedent multiple times in the past, and then there was an argument that ended in a shooting. At least that's the allegations. The blue one I used yesterday was light blue. Sorry if I didn't comment on that one. I apologize. Have an easy day. It is light blue. Koberger is going to be chilling. Another one with just dead eyes. Supposedly the victim and defendant would get into heated arguments about the translation of the Bible. Let's see. Yeah, if I get to be in court, you can bet that I'm going to fight for the best possible setup, audio and video wise. Stephen, there is so much to look into in the Koberger case. I'm excited. Brandy Churchwell is doing an incredible job with her charts. I think she's already starting to put together information on that one, but she's going to be tracking that. That has a lot of information to follow, just a ton. It's going to be great. Tish, I want to take this opportunity to thank each and every one of the members for their kindness, support, and understanding. Most of all, the way you truly care for RA. You make this little world go round. Tish, thank you so much. So good to have you here. You're absolutely incredible. Thal's here. Thal, good to see you, my friend. How goes the Pokemon card search? Let me know if there's any good news lately. Do you know the date for the this month for BK. I was going to Moscow in a couple of weeks. I believe the hearing is going to be open to the public. It's going to be on Zoom, but we're not allowed to restream it or record it, according to Idaho. Now, does Idaho have subject matter jurisdiction over me? Good question. I don't want to find out, because you find out by, getting a subpoena, but or a summons. The trial is going. The trial. It's just a hearing that's happening this month, and I believe it's going to address a couple points, specifically the gag order surrounding the case, and they're fighting it. The Associated Press is fighting it. Some other people are fighting it. They're sort of grouping all those requests together into one hearing. I think it's on the 22nd. I have to look at that. RA reporting live from Idaho, potato capital of the world. Good potatoes too. I'm not making fun of them. Is Koberger trial going on now? Jennifer, we don't have a trial date on that one yet. We're still waiting. I think they have a, the date was scheduled for the 25th of May. They moved it to the 22nd of May. So we have that, but that's just a hearing about the gag order. It's not the actual trial. I think we're still waiting for his preliminary hearing, which would be where he pleads guilty or not guilty. And then we'll have an idea from there. Also, if he's waiving his right to a speedy trial, if he does that, or suddenly that pushes his trial out years. It could be 2 to 3 years before the trial happens at that point. If he does not waive his right, which I think would be the smart thing to do in this case, because it's going to really put the state in a tight spot as far as getting all the information together.
Took class in college on sociology of death and dying. Made death less scary for me. Wonderful book about how ages, cultures, religions deal with death.
It's fascinating. There's a lot there to study, Lizzie Dog. It is interesting. It's a part of each culture, and it's very different. I mean, even if you go back into some of the what we call the pre-civilized cultures that and how they handle it. It's fascinating stuff. Glad you like that. Lady Writer says, you said there were 2 shootings in the church on this trial. Yeah. The story. Let's see if I can find it here. See, that's the state of New Hampshire judicial date filed. Okay.
I'm not a cat.
I'm not a cat. Okay, so this trial, we've also got a motion to dismiss due to a violation of the speedy right to trial, which is fascinating. Let me see if I can read that while we're waiting for court to begin. And so we know that Brandon at one point represented himself. Then he waived that right and said, "Actually, I would like to have lawyers." And so he got, I think, public defenders appointed by the court. So he's got the public defenders that file a motion. This one is from, let's see, what's the date here? I filed let's see, October 4th, 2022 of last year. It says, motion to dismiss due to the violation of the right to a speedy trial. Now comes Brandon Castiglione by and through Wade Harwood, Esquire, and Amy A. Ashworth, Esquire, and respectfully request the Honorable Court dismiss the pending charges of Mr. Castiglione's right to speedy trial has been as Mr. Castiglione's right to a speedy trial has been violated under both the New Hampshire Part 1, Article 14, and the 14th Amendment of the United States Constitution. I'll find you. Welcome to the gallery. Good to have you as a new member. Love the picture of the cat. Doing what cats do best. That's awesome. Thank you so much for being a member. Let's see. I missed a question there. Something about Sarah Boone. Will this trial start at this time each day? No, Lisa, it's going to be earlier in the morning. They've been working on jury selection up till now and had other things on the docket. So now we're just now getting to this. Okay. Why is this not going? Hold tight. Okay. Still not getting anything there. All right. So he's saying, my rights to a speedy trial have been violated by both the New Hampshire law and the United States Constitution because the state accuses Mr. Castiglione of alternate theories of second-degree murder for causing death of Luis Garcia. Mr. Castiglione has been held without bail at the Rockingham County Correction since his arrest in 2019. On December 2nd, the defense filed a motion to determine Castiglione's competency. All pretrial motions were stayed during the determination of competency. On December 19th, the court granted the state's ascended motion to extend indictment of deadline to February 2020. The basis included the defense intended to raise the issue of competency, and there were several pieces of evidence still being tested. March 4th, the court granted the state assented motion to extend again, so extended the request to April 2020. So the defense keeps asking for requests to extend. In an agreement filed March 5th, the defense, and granted the same day, a hearing on the issue of competency was continued. March 16th, the court issued first of many orders suspending in-person court proceedings. So this was during pandemic. They referenced that here. The courts remained closed for jury trials and grand jury proceedings for several months due to global pandemic. On April 29th, the court approved an agreement filed by the defense to reschedule the competency hearing for two reasons. The defense needed more time to prepare. The second reason would be the defense needed additional time to consult with its own expert. It seems like all these delays are caused by the defense. See, in paragraph 8 is noted that Mr. Castiglione is troubled that defense counsel has not yet filed a notice of speedy trial. On July 14th of 2020, the Supreme Court issued an order authorizing the Superior Court to resume jury trials. August 12th of 2020, Mr. Castiglione was competent to stand trial. September 3rd, he issued an order authorizing a multi-county grand jury that was available to all counties. He was ultimately ignited on secondary indicted. I said ignited, which would be lighted on fire. Indicted on second-degree murder charges in November. This is a long process. The defense filed an assented to structuring a proposal on April 5th, 2021, requesting jury selection take place in February of 2022. In May, the Superior Court convened a statewide grand jury process to ensure all counties could conduct grand jury proceedings. Let's see, July issued an order on status conference. During the status conference, it was noted that the trial may need to be moved. It noted that if Mr. Castiglione wishes to retain his current counsel, he'll have to agree to move the trial to June 2022 and waive his speedy trial rights. If Mr. Castiglione wishes to have his trial occur earlier, new counsel will be appointed. Mr. Castiglione was ordered to report back to the court before July 23rd, 2021, as to what his decision was. On August 6th, Mr. Castiglione asserted his speedy right to trial and asked that the trial begin as soon as possible. The court noted that the trial date was going to be moved back if Mr. Castiglione did not request change in counsel. August 6th and March, between August 6th and March of 2022, so August 6th, 2021 and March of 2022, several states' counsel hearings were held. Mr. Castiglione orally requested a show cause hearing concerning his right to a speedy trial, but decided to wait until after the court ruled on his motion for new counsel. February, he got new counsel. In February 16th, it granted the state's expedited motion to clarify scheduling. The court ordered that on the March 21st, 2022, jury selection has been canceled and will need to be rescheduled after new appearance is filed for the defendant. The postponement is due to no fault of the state or court. Man, this is just a lot of delay after delay after delay. Dude, they've requested this, and then there's argument following all those facts. But they requested a whole bunch of, for a whole bunch of reasons. Let's see what the resolution was. Let's see, that was 1014. The state's objection to the motion to dismiss. Oh, there's good stuff. Sorry, I've been ignoring chat. I love reading this stuff. The YouTube emoji were really wacky yesterday. We need to put a Recovery Addict montage together with the House of Pain music track. I'm getting good at the last name. I just go skip over it quickly and pretend I know what I'm saying. Ignited would be something. That would be fantastic. It would be spectacular, like a sparkler. Sounds like a lot of games, but cases live and die on these pretrial motions. Just look at Baldwin. Yep. Any idea where you can get a Gannon Strong bracelet? You should make bracelets for each trial you cover. That would have to be through the foundations that are raising money there for the cause. I'm not connected with those, so I wouldn't be selling those. There may be people in chat who can connect you to the right people. Lily B, welcome to the gallery. Good to have you as a member. Thank you so much. We're trying to start a new trial here if that'll ever kick off. Maui Bell, aloha. Good to have you here. Welcome. Diet Coke Mama is here. Y'all must have fast fingers. It takes me forever to type what I want to say. We can probably turn off slow chat. Is that on right now? It's a pretty small group. Let's see. I have to make a new list, new playlist. It's not Mark Jensen or Police Chase. New playlist. It's going to be. Okay. Let's create that one. Okay, done. Okay, where is our slow chat? Oh, it's not on. We're good. Their slow chat is off. I think you guys beat me to it. All right. Are we hitting 22K? I don't think we're anywhere close to that. We've got. It's going to be a nice quiet day. We are 21,468. I think that's where we're going to stay.
And now Murdoch stole it.
And Alex stole it. Good morning, Nicole. What's the new trial going to be like? It's going to be Brandon Castiglione. He is accused of shooting a preacher, a church official. Oh, here we go. We have a feed, but no audio yet. I believe this is the judge. I'm just basing this on the fact that there's a robe. $1776. That's a nice state seal. State of New Hampshire. So this is a murder trial, church-related, multiple shootings. Krista gifted a membership. Thank you so much, Krista. That one went to Glam Mam. Congratulations and thank you. What's the 411 today? Phoenix, we're hoping to get a feed from the court here any second now. I'm listening for audio, seeing if we have a source somewhere else. Why is that doing that? I don't like that. Let's turn that off. There we go. Yeah, there's no audio right now. So apparently we're just they're just getting set. We're waiting for the judge to give us the go-ahead. Robes are a huge hint. Yes, very few people wear a costume in court, but the judge is one of them. And he's just chilling. Oh, hello there. He looks like a nice guy. I like the it's most, I was going to say salt and pepper beard, but it's mostly salt with a little bit of pepper. But he's got the closely cropped goatee. There's the applause. I think we have audio now. Please say this is not our audio.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Believe it or not, the seat you sit in is actually very important to keep track of the juror numbers and identities in the course of the trial.
No.
Thank you.
Is that his lunch?
Thank you. Lift
and gentlemen, I will start by asking you all to please stand. I'm going to swear you in for this trial. Ask that you all please raise your right hand. Will the defense and Mr. Castiglione also please stand, face the jury?
She's like, Castiglione.
Ladies and gentlemen, at the conclusion of this oath, will you each please say, I do? Do you solemnly affirm that you will carefully consider the evidence and the law presented to you in this case, and that you will deliver a fair and true verdict as to the charges against the defendant? Like you do. Thank you. You may be seated. Mr. Castiglione, if you please remain standing. Ladies and gentlemen, I will now read to you the complaints or the indictments alleged against this defendant. First is charge ID 1805389C. An indictment at the Superior Court, Holden at Concord, convened a statewide grand jury upon the 2nd day of November in the year of our Lord 2020. The grand jurors for the state of New Hampshire, upon their oath, present that Brandon M. Castiglione, of or formerly of Londonderry, New Hampshire, on or about the 1st day of October 2019 at Londonderry in the county of Rockingham, aforesaid, with force and arms, did commit the crime of second-degree murder. In that, Brandon M. Castiglione did knowingly cause the death of Louis Garcia by shooting Mr. Garcia through the neck with a firearm, resulting in his death. Next is charge ID 1674110C, an indictment alleging that Brandon M. Castiglione, on or about the 1st day of October 2019 at Londonderry in the county of Rockingham, aforesaid, with force and arms, did commit the crime of second-degree murder. In that, Brandon M. Castiglione did recklessly cause the death of Louis Garcia under circumstances manifesting an extreme indifference to the value of human life by shooting Mr. Garcia in the neck with a firearm, resulting in his death. Said acts being contrary to the form of the statute in such case made and provided and against the peace and dignity of the state. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the defendant, Brandon Castiglione, has been arraigned on these indictments, and he has pleaded not guilty. And of this he puts himself upon his country for trial, which country you are. The Assistant Attorney Generals for the state have joined in this issue, and you are to say by your verdict if the defendant, Brandon Castiglione, is guilty of the crimes whereof he stands indicted or not guilty. Please give your full attention to the evidence. Mr. Castiglione and counsel, you may be seated.
Thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. As I mentioned at the beginning of the trial, my name is Judge Ruoff. And I'm going to go through a couple of housekeeping matters with you. And then I will read some basic introductory statements, and then we'll get to opening statements. First thing is, I warned you yesterday, throughout the course of the trial, you're not allowed to do any independent research. You're not allowed to discuss the case amongst yourselves or with anybody else for that matter. You're not supposed to go on MapQuest or Google Maps and look up locations of anything. No independent research whatsoever. All the information you should need to decide this case you'll get within this courtroom. The other thing is I want to call to your attention, as you've noticed, there's really only one way in and one way out of this building. So
this is
you
called
jurors,
doing
as
white
well as
balance.
members of the public and people involved in this case will be coming and going through the same door. That's why we give you the juror identification pin, so that everybody knows who you are. Hopefully they give you the pins, or they'll give them to you on the way out, so that everybody knows who you are, including the folks downstairs and including the parties. They're under obligation not to have any contact with you. So if you happen to see them and say hi to them or good morning, they may just nod, but they're not allowed to have any contact with you whatsoever. They're not being impolite, they're just abiding by the rules of court. Okay? And that's part of the process, that you're not allowed to have any contact with anybody outside of the context of this case. Okay? That being said, I'm going to read some instructions to you that apply throughout the course of the trial.
Can you guys tell me if you like it the way it sounds right now,
because they're part of the record
or if you would rather have it sound like this?
In every criminal case throughout the state of New Hampshire. So if you've served on a jury before,
one or two,
many of these will probably sound familiar to you.
This is two.
I'm going to give you some general instructions about the law that applies to this case and as to a few other matters. which will give you some guidance as you consider the evidence in this case. And at the end of the case, I will give you further instructions, and then you will retire to the jury deliberation room to decide your verdict. It is your duty as jurors to follow all the instructions I give you. Regardless of any opinion you may have as to what the law ought to be, the law as I explain it to you is the law you must follow in reaching your verdict. Also, you must consider all the instructions which I give you, regardless of the order in which I give them. You must not single out any particular instruction alone as stating the law. Rather, you should consider each instruction in light of and together with the others. You are to give them the same weight and consideration. It is up to you to decide the facts of this case. You must decide the facts solely from the evidence in this trial. You must apply to the law given to you in these instructions to the facts, and in this way reach a fair and just verdict. You should decide the facts in this case without prejudice, without fear, and without sympathy. Now, the evidence consists of the testimony under oath of the witnesses and the exhibits. Now, there are certain other matters that you may not consider as evidence, and I will discuss those matters first, and then I will turn to a discussion of what you may consider. As you know from the clerk's reading of the charges, the defendant in this case stands accused of second-degree murder. I will explain the legal definition of this crime in more detail at the conclusion of this case. The fact that the defendant has been arrested and charged is not evidence of guilt. A charge is simply a way of giving the defendant notice of the accusations against him. It is a formal way of accusing the defendant of a crime in order to consider the fact that the defendant has been charged.
They're struggling with the audio. They have the onboard camera audio turned on, and they're trying to find
the
the other
defendant
way.
should not influence your decision.
There are mics.
The
in the
duty
court
of
that should be
opposing
tied
evidence
into.
is for the judge. You should consider only on the evidence without considering the issue of punishment. You will hear the lawyers discuss the facts and the law and their arguments to you. These arguments, or any statements made by counsel during the course of the trial, are not evidence. The lawyers are not witnesses. Their purpose is to help you understand the evidence and the law. And if the lawyers state the law differently from the law as I explain it to you in these instructions, then you must follow these instructions and ignore the statements of the lawyers. If the lawyers state the evidence differently from how you recall it, then you should follow your own memory of what the evidence was. That is why you must pay attention to the evidence. You will not get a transcript of the testimony. During the trial, the lawyers may make objections. The lawyers are supposed to object when they believe that certain evidence is not admissible. If I sustain an objection or exclude any evidence, you must not guess as to what the answer or evidence would have been. If I order that a question and answer be stricken from the record, you must not consider either the question or the answer as evidence. Now, I might allow some evidence to be admitted for a limited purpose. You may only use any such evidence for that purpose that I instruct you that it may be used for. Now, throughout the trial, I do my best to remain fair and impartial, just as you are required to be. If you think that I express or suggest an opinion as to the facts in my rulings, you should ignore such an opinion. It is up to you alone to decide the facts in this case. The role of the judge is to run the trial in a fair and orderly manner, to decide the admissibility of evidence, and to give these instructions. My role is very different than yours. Thus, if you observe me taking down notes during the testimony, you should not attach any significance to the fact that I am taking notes. I have to keep track of different things during the course of the trial, and that's what I use my laptop for. As you were instructed during the general selection process, there is a presumption of innocence that applies and continues throughout this trial until the state convinces you, beyond a reasonable doubt, that the defendant is guilty of each and every element of the offense with which he has been charged. And the defendant has no obligation whatsoever to prove his innocence in this matter, and that includes the absolute right not to testify if he so chooses. You are not allowed to draw any unfavorable, adverse, or negative inference if the defendant chooses not to testify in this matter. Now, having addressed what you cannot consider in deciding this case, I will now turn to what you should consider. You should consider only the legally admissible evidence, and that is the testimony of the witnesses and the exhibits. Now, there are two kinds of evidence, direct and circumstantial. Direct evidence is direct proof of a fact, such as the testimony or statements of a person about what the person saw, heard, or did. Circumstantial evidence is indirect evidence. That is, it's proof of a chain of facts from which you could find that another fact exists, although it hasn't been proved directly. For example, if you look outside and see water droplets falling from the sky, that is direct evidence that it's raining. But if you look out the window at night and the ground is dry, and again the next morning and the ground is wet, that is indirect or circumstantial evidence that it rained during the night. By circumstantial evidence, I simply mean that you may infer the ultimate fact from other facts that have been proven. Conversely, you may not reach conclusions based on facts that have not been proven. Now, in the rain example, wet ground alone may support an inference that it rained during the night. But in the absence of additional evidence, it will not necessarily support an inference about how much rain fell or for how long a period of time. You should consider both kinds of evidence. You are permitted to give equal weight to both. But it is for you to decide how much weight to give any evidence, whether it's direct or circumstantial. However, to be sufficient to establish guilt beyond a reasonable doubt, circumstantial evidence must exclude all other reasonable conclusions. This means that if from the circumstantial evidence it's reasonable to arrive at two conclusions, one consistent with guilt and one consistent with innocence, then you must choose the reasonable conclusion consistent with innocence. However, you do not consider each item of circumstantial evidence in isolation. In determining whether all other reasonable conclusions have been excluded, you should consider each item of circumstantial evidence in the context of all the other evidence, which includes other circumstantial evidence and direct evidence. Additionally, this circumstantial evidence rule does not apply to direct evidence. Therefore, if there's a conflict between the witnesses who offered direct evidence concerning certain facts, you must decide which witness of either to believe. For example, suppose there are two eyewitnesses to a crime, and one testifies that the defendant committed the crime, and the other testifies that the defendant did not commit the crime. This presents a situation where there is a conflict in the direct evidence. In this situation, you, the jury, must decide which witness, if either, to believe, and whether, based on all the evidence, the state has proven the defendant's guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. In sum, you should consider all the direct and circumstantial evidence in the case, as well as any reasonable inferences you draw therefrom, in deciding whether the state has proved all the elements of the crime beyond a reasonable doubt. In reviewing the evidence, you should consider the quality of the evidence and not the quantity. It's not the number of witnesses or quantity of evidence that is important, but the quality of the evidence that is important. In deciding whether the state has proved the charge against the defendant beyond a reasonable doubt, you must decide the credibility of witnesses. That is, it is up to you to decide who to believe. If there is any conflict between the witnesses, then you must resolve the conflict. Simply because a witness has taken an oath to tell the truth does not mean that you have to accept the testimony as true. Use your common sense and judgment. Consider those factors you use in deciding important issues in your everyday lives. For example, you may consider the witness's appearance, attitude, and behavior on the witness stand and the way the witness testified. The witness's age, intelligence, and experience. The witness's opportunity and ability to see or hear the things about which the witness testified. The accuracy of the witness's testimony. The witness's memory. Any motive of the witness not to tell the truth. Any interest that a witness had in the outcome of the case. Any bias the witness or friendship or animosity the witness may have for or against any of the other people in the case. The consistency or inconsistency of the witness's testimony. Whether or not what the witness said appears reasonable or unreasonable. Whether what the witness said is consistent or inconsistent with the testimony of other witnesses or with statements the witness made at another time. Now, in deciding which witnesses to believe and how much of their testimony to believe, you should consider both the direct and cross-examination of the witness. If you believe that part of a witness's testimony is false, you may choose to distrust other parts also, but you are not required to do so. Inconsistencies and contradictions within a witness's testimony or between witnesses do not necessarily mean that you should disbelieve the witness. It is possible for honest people to witness the same event and see or hear things differently. You should evaluate inconsistencies and contradictions and determine whether they are important or unimportant. You need not believe any witness even though the testimony is uncontradicted. Nor are you required to accept testimony as true simply because some or even all the witnesses agree with each other. You may find the testimony of one witness or of a few witnesses more persuasive than the testimony of a larger number. Now, these principles apply to all witnesses, whether they are ordinary citizens, police officers, or otherwise. In short, you should consider the testimony of each witness and give it the weight you, the jury, think it deserves. You can accept all of what a witness said, you can reject all of it, or you can accept part and reject part. That determination is exclusively yours to make. Now, I've addressed what you should not consider and what you should consider in rendering a verdict. Now I'm going to discuss how convinced one way or the other you must be, and this is referred to as the burden of proof. Under our constitutions, all defendants in criminal cases are presumed to be innocent until proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. The burden of proving guilt is entirely on the state. The defendant does not have to prove his innocence. The defendant enters this courtroom as an innocent person, and you must consider him to be an innocent person until the state convinces you beyond a reasonable doubt that he is guilty of every element of the alleged offense. If, after all the evidence and arguments, you have a reasonable doubt as to the defendant having committed any one or more of the elements of the offense, then you must find him not guilty. A reasonable doubt is just what the words ordinarily imply. The use of the word reasonable means simply that the doubt must be reasonable rather than unreasonable. It must be a doubt based on reason. It's not a frivolous or fanciful doubt, nor is it one that can easily be explained away. Rather, it's such a doubt based on reason as remains after consideration of all the evidence the state has offered against it. The test you must use is this. If you have a reasonable doubt as to whether the state has proved any one or more of the elements of the crime charged, you must find the defendant not guilty. However, if you find the state has proved all the elements of the offense charged beyond a reasonable doubt, you should find the defendant guilty. After all the evidence has been submitted and both sides have presented their closing arguments, I will give you further instructions about the law that applies to this case, including the legal definition of the crimes charged in this case and other issues that might arise during the course of the trial. You are to consider the instructions as a whole, both the instructions I give now and the ones I will give at the end of the case, and not single out any one particular instruction as stating the law. You will also have a written copy of my entire instructions with you in the jury deliberation room. Thank you, Judge.
On October 1st, 2019, Luis Garcia was senselessly shot in the back of his head and killed by this man, Brandon Castiglione. If that sounds simple to you to say it that way, it's because it is simple. This is not a case of some complicated mystery where we're trying to figure out who killed Luis. The defendant did. And the evidence you'll hear throughout this trial will prove it. One bullet, one casing, one pistol, and one man, Brandon Castiglione. And this is slide 7. All found within feet of Luis's body. In the room directly next to the defendant's bedroom, and in the hall just outside that room. That's the room where Luis had been doing some sanding and painting for the defendant's father, Mark, in their home at 15 Ridgemont Drive in Londonderry, New Hampshire. Now, you're not going to hear evidence from the state in this case about why Brandon shot and killed Luis Garcia. The fact of the matter is, not every act can be explained, especially one so senseless. But as the judge will explain to you later, motive is not an element of the crime of second-degree murder. You will, however, hear evidence showing that the one bullet and one casing were the same make and manufacture as an ammunition box kept in the defendant's bedside drawer, and that one pistol found just outside the room, a Glock 19 9mm, was the defendant's. And he kept that pistol, he kept his Glock 19 in its case, in the drawer, right next to his bed. You're going to hear in this trial that the defendant and Mr. Garcia met through their church, New England Pentecostal, in Pelham, New Hampshire. Their families also met through that church, and they met about a year and a half before the defendant shot and killed Luis. In the weeks leading up to October 1st of 2019, Luis was working, as I said, in the defendant's home in Londonderry. That's a home that's owned by Mark Castiglione, the defendant's father. And the defendant and his dad were the only two people living in that home at the time. Luis had spent about 2 or 3 weeks before that day going room to room, doing small repairs and renovations for Mark. He had stripped wallpaper, sanded, and painted some rooms. And on that day, he was working in the last bedroom on the left down the hallway. He was sanding and painting. It was a room that Mark had turned into an office, and at the time, all of the furniture had been moved to the center of the room and was covered with a painter's tarp. Now, during those 2 or 3 weeks, you'll hear, as we expect you'll hear, from Mark Castiglione himself, that he would leave for work around 6 a.m. every workday. And he'd travel to Billerica, Mass., where his job was, and he'd stay there until he came home in the afternoon or evening. Luis, as you'll hear, would leave his house in Manchester around 8 a.m. every day. And he'd travel to Londonderry about 20 or 25 minutes to the Castiglione residence. And he'd stay there while he worked on whatever project he was working on. For the rest of the day after Luis would arrive, it would be him and the defendant inside that home. You're going to hear that on days that Luis was working in that house, Mark Castiglione would regularly call him on his first break of the day at 9:30. He'd call him to check in on progress that he was making, to see what room he was working on that day. And as Mark would put it, Luis answered those calls consistently. But that changed on October 1st, 2019. Because on that morning, Luis did not answer Mark's calls. Through the trial, you'll see and hear evidence that Mark didn't just call at 9:30, he called again at 11:42 and again at 12:14, each time without an answer from Luis. You're also going to hear and see evidence that Mark would call his son, the defendant, each time he tried calling Luis. But each time, the defendant also would not answer his phone. So Mark eventually got in touch with his daughter, Danielle Padalano. And Danielle in turn got in touch with Frances Pastana, or Fran. Now Frances and
having some connection issues with the
Luis and his wife Patty had lived with Fran and Jeff for a short time after they moved to New Hampshire from Massachusetts. So Frances tried calling Luis's phone. Frances tried calling Patty, Luis's wife. And then Patty tried calling Luis. Nobody could get in touch with him. I thought this was odd or concerning, as you'll hear, that no one could reach Luis. So Danielle, the defendant's sister, and Fran, his grandmother, finally decided to go to 15 Ridgemont Drive, where they knew, and where Mark knew, and where Patty knew, that Luis was supposed to be that day. And that's where the defendant was as well. You're going to hear that when they got there, Luis's car was in the driveway, but the house was locked up. Fran and Danielle's yelling and calling into the house went unanswered. Danielle tried the front door, she tried the back door. Like I said, they tried yelling, and they tried throwing acorns or pebbles at the windows of the house, including this top left corner. That window is where they saw a light on. And Danielle recognized that as her old bedroom, the last room on the left at the end of the hall. Despite all their efforts, still nothing from inside, no response. So Danielle, concerned for her brother and for Luis, called her dad, Mark, and Mark told her about the key he had been leaving for Luis under the front mat. He'd left it so Luis could get into the house early in the morning when Brandon would still be sleeping. She found the key right where Mark kept it. She unlocked the door and went inside. She went up the stairs. She went down the hall to the left, toward her old bedroom at the end of the hall. this doorway on the left here. And that was the room where Luis had been working that morning. Like I said, that office furniture was moved to the center of the room. You're going to hear that when Danielle got to that room, she found her brother, the defendant, just inside the door. He was on his hands and knees, and he was mumbling, but words she couldn't quite understand. He was unharmed and uninjured. Luis Garcia, on the other hand, trapped between the furniture and the wall he had just been sanding. Danielle ran back outside to her grandmother and told her what she had seen, and then Fran went inside. And Fran found the defendant in that same room, her grandson, right where Danielle had seen him. And then she made her way around that furniture.
He keeps saying you're going to hear, and then the audio cuts out.
She saw him lying on the floor, blood pooling around his head and surrounding him. The two women called 911 immediately, and Londonderry officers went to the house. When they entered the house, they saw several crucial things. First was at the end of this hallway, that pistol on top of that plastic set of drawers. And then slide 17, inside the room, they found the defendant in this area here, just feet away from Luis. You'll hear that they found a bullet casing between the two men. They found a bullet between the two men. One bullet, one casing, one pistol, one killer in the room with Luis. Now that bullet and the casing were sent to the New Hampshire State Laboratory, where they were analyzed by criminalist Jill Terrio, an expert from whom you'll hear that both the casing and the bullet were linked to that gun found in the hallway, the defendant's gun. The Glock 19 9mm, serial number TSA 446. She'll also explain to you that the casing and the bullet were 9mm solid copper hollow point, marketed by a brand called Fiachi. The pistol was also sent to the New Hampshire State Laboratory, where it was analyzed for fingerprints by criminalist Rachel Martinez. You'll hear from her that the only fingerprint found on that gun was Brandon Castiglione's. You'll also hear throughout this trial that when New Hampshire State Police investigators got on the scene, in the house, they found that the doors, other than the front door, which Danielle had opened, were locked. The windows were shut. There was property inside, items in front of the windows, obstructing them. They found no indication that anyone had entered that house other than Luis Garcia when he got there that morning, and Danielle Padalano when she unlocked the door, and Fran when she followed. You're going to hear from Chief Medical Examiner Dr. Jenny Duval, who did an autopsy on Luis's body. She's going to explain to you that Mr. Garcia, Luis, was shot from behind, that the bullet entered the right base of his skull and exited the left front of his neck. The shot was not self-inflicted, and that it was from fairly close range. She'll also tell you about the untold damage that bullet caused Luis's spinal cord. It caused him to immediately collapse and bleed out on the floor of that room, where the defendant and his bullet and his casing were found with him. His gun just outside the door. The reason why the defendant shot and killed Luis Garcia, the fact remains that he did. And the law governing the defendant's actions is clear. By demonstrating that the defendant, with the requisite criminal intent,
it's supposed to last 2 weeks, but if it keeps cutting out like this, it will last.
There are no independent eyewitnesses to exactly what the defendant said or what he was thinking when he pulled that trigger. The injuries he caused show his criminal intent and the act. Judge Ruoff will later instruct you that the law criminalizes the murder, regardless of the motive for his criminal intent or the act. So 1 bullet and 1 casing, the defendant's. 1 pistol, the defendant's, with his fingerprint on it. And 1 man, 1 killer, the defendant found in the room with Luis Garcia, having been inside that house when it was locked during that day. He was found feet away from Luis, having not called 911, having not answered his phone, having not answered his family members' calls from outside the house. While it may not make sense, this man shot and killed a husband, father, grandfather, and just man.
If these pauses take a little longer, I'll just fill in with what I think he's saying.
And his bullet.
We've got an audio connection issue. I believe it's because they're streaming this over a bonded cellular connection.
Guilty
or signal. Saying, so he shot the guy, you should find him guilty of second-degree murder, which is what the charge is. 1 man, 1 bullet, 1 gun, 1 victim. They say it's open and shut. Now we're going to hear the other side of the story. Judge is like, what are you doing in my courtroom? Look at the glare he's giving this guy. He's not happy. So he just moved out of sight, so we can't even get a shot at him. He moved out of the sight of the camera.
Garcia lay dead.
And this would be really compelling.
Brandon was handcuffed in the back of a police car. And because the police jumped to that conclusion, they did not do a thorough investigation. You're going to hear about things that the police should have done in this case that they simply did not do. You're also going to hear that the police only looked for evidence that pointed towards Brandon. The police jumped to conclusions. They did not do a thorough investigation. They only looked for evidence that pointed to Brandon.
This is Zachary Anderson's same defense.
That's what this case is about. Now, as the judge told you, Brandon sits here in this courtroom, an innocent man. The government has to prove that he did what they're accusing him of. The government has to prove that to you beyond a reasonable doubt. You must consider Brandon to be innocent unless and until the government meets that word. Now, those 4 words, beyond a reasonable doubt, are important. They're the highest standard we have in our legal system. I want to talk to you about some of the reasons you're going to have to doubt the government's case. As I indicated, the police jumped to conclusions. When the first officer arrived, it's a patrol officer, he finds Brandon kneeling, praying in the doorway. Within 5 minutes, Brandon is under arrest. He's handcuffed. He's in the back of a police car. And ladies and gentlemen, Brandon is in the back of that police car long before major crimes arrived, long before the detectives who were actually investigating a homicide arrived. They know that Brandon has been arrested long before they get there. And that fact affects everything that they did going forward. Because the police jumped to conclusions. They did not do a thorough investigation. I want to talk to you about one thing that shows that. There will be others. But I want to start off talking to you about evidence that was collected, but that the police didn't bother to test. You heard that Luis Garcia was shot. The police knew they were investigating a shooting. Now, when a bullet is fired out of a gun, there are two parts in a bullet. There's the outer part, the casing, and then there's the bullet itself. And in between the two, there's some gunpowder. And when the gun fires, that powder explodes, and that's what shoots the bullet out of the barrel of the gun. When that powder explodes, it goes over everything that's really nearby. It gets on the hands of whoever is firing the gun. It gets on the clothing of whoever is firing the gun. Now, you're going to hear that the government got what's called a body warrant. A warrant that allowed them to search Brandon, to search his physical person, to search his body, to search what he was wearing, to search everything that was on him. And you're going to hear the government collected his clothing, but they never tested it. They never tested it for gunshot residue. You're going to hear that they specifically swabbed his hands. And they did that specifically to put there, right on an evidence examination request form, that they were swabbing the hands to test for gunshot residue. That testing never happened. Now, this gunshot residue testing, that's not the only thing where police collected evidence but didn't test it. You're going to hear about other things like that as the case proceeds. I'm not going to get into all of them right now. But I am going to ask that you pay careful attention throughout the trial to all the times where the police collected evidence that they should have tested, that they then just didn't bother to even test. And I'm going to ask that you consider that. Keep that in mind and think about that when you're deciding whether the government proved to you that Brandon did what they are accusing him of. There's another way that the government did not do a thorough investigation in this case. I want to talk to you for a moment about some of the evidence that the police didn't even bother collecting. You're going to hear that Brandon had a cell phone. And I don't know how much you all pay attention to how much data a phone truly generates and how much it really keeps track of you. But you're going to hear that there's a tremendous amount of data on a cell phone. One of the things a cell phone can track is your exact location with GPS. Down to a couple of feet. It can track the number of steps someone has taken. It can track where they went throughout the day. It can track whether the person received calls or texts, whether there were plans for someone else to come over to the house. All of those kinds of useful bits of information would have been on Brandon's phone. But you're going to hear the police never took his phone. They never asked him for permission to search his phone. They never tried to get a warrant to search his phone. They didn't do anything with his phone whatsoever. Now, that's not the only piece of evidence that they should have collected, should have looked into, but didn't. It's not the only thing that they didn't collect that points to how much they were not thorough in their investigations. So I'm, again, going to ask that you pay attention to the other evidence you hear about the police not collecting, that they would have collected had they investigated properly. The other really important thing in this case to keep in mind as you're listening to all the evidence is that the police were only looking for evidence that pointed towards Brandon. Again, they jumped to that conclusion right off the bat, and they tried to find things that would back that up. You're going to hear the police did not go wherever the evidence would lead them. They specifically looked for evidence that would point to Brandon. And I want to talk to you about one very specific, very important example of that. And that's the gun. You know, the government just told you a few minutes ago that the gun was sent to the state lab and it was fingerprinted. And that's true. And when that happened, what did they find? Surprise, surprise, Brandon's fingerprints were on Brandon's gun. But I want to talk to you about some of the things the government didn't tell you about that gun and did not tell you about what happened at the state lab. Because you're going to hear that prior to that gun being tested for fingerprints, the lab was told to the gun. You're going to hear that prior to 6 swabs, not 1, not 2, 6 different swabs were taken to test for what's called touch DNA. I want to explain that concept just briefly. We all have, cells on our skin cells on our hands. When we touch something, we leave tiny, tiny microscopic amounts of our skin behind. And that tiny microscopic amount can be tested, can be collected and tested for DNA. It's called touch DNA. And you're going to hear that when a surface is textured, it's very hard to fingerprint, but it's more likely to leave behind touch DNA. Now, you're going to hear that the state lab collected, as I said, 6 swabs from the gun. Those were from the handle, those were from the trigger. Those 6 swabs would have had DNA from someone who touched the gun by the handle, not leaving fingerprints. Someone who touched the trigger, again, not leaving fingerprints. But the state lab was specifically told, look for evidence that connects the gun to Brandon Castiglione. And if you find it, do not do any more testing. Don't do it. We don't want to know. We don't want to run any tests that might connect the gun to someone other than Brandon. We don't want to do any tests that might connect the gun to the actual killer. No. The lab was told, don't run those tests. The police were only interested in evidence that pointed to Brandon. And ladies and gentlemen, you're going to hear who gave that instruction to the state lab. The person who told the lab to look for evidence to link it to Brandon and told the lab, don't test those swabs that you took for touch DNA. That person, that was Trooper Stephen Slover, the lead investigator in this case. Now, you've heard that when the police first arrived, and just even minutes before that, when Brandon's sister and his grandmother went into the house and saw him, he was, you're going to hear it probably described a few different ways, but he was down on his knees. Some people have described it as being in a fetal position. And he was praying. You're going to hear that he was speaking in tongues. And you're going to hear that this is not uncommon for Brandon. You will hear that Brandon was, at the time, and is to this day, a deeply religious man. That he went to church regularly at the New England Pentecostal. That one of the things that people do there is speak in tongues. This is something that's part of his religious tradition. You're going to hear from multiple people that they had seen him do this frequently, many times, many different places. They'll tell you that when Brandon is in a state of deep prayer like that, he blocks everything out. He cannot be disturbed. People cannot get his attention. And they'll tell you he can stay in that state for hours at a time. It's not surprising that when Brandon found Luis Garcia dead, that he started praying. Now, I want to talk to you about something else that the government mentioned a few minutes ago. And they said they don't have to prove motive. And that's technically true. They don't. But they're saying that, ladies and gentlemen, because they have absolutely no motive. There was no reason Brandon would have had to kill Luis Garcia. You're going to hear that they were on friendly terms, that they attended the same church, that they frequently went to Bible study together, that they hung out and socialized outside of church activities sometimes. You're not going to hear from a single person who says that they saw Brandon ever argue with Mr. Garcia, with Luis. You're not going to hear from anyone who says that Brandon ever threatened Luis. No, they were friends. When you've heard all the evidence, you will see that the government cannot prove its case. It can't prove its case because the police jumped to conclusions. It can't prove its case because the police did not do a thorough investigation. It can't prove its case because the police only looked for evidence that pointed to Brandon and ignored evidence that didn't. In the end, there is one very, very simple reason the government will not be able to prove its case. Brandon Castiglione did not shoot Luis Garcia. Brandon is not guilty. Thank you, Counselor.
And there we have our opening statements.
So the state calls Sergeant Andrew Phillips.
And we're going straight to evidence. This noise is deafening. The waterfall is just awful in court. Just have to turn down the whole top end of the voice. It's just so bad.
If you'll remain standing and raise your right hand, I'll swear you in. I swear the testimony you'll give today will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Okay, have a seat. Just state your full name and spell your last name for the record.
Yep, Andrew Phillips, Phillips.
And how are you employed?
I'm currently a patrol sergeant with the Londonderry Police Department.
If you could just speak up so we can hear you all the way back here.
Yep.
Appreciate it, thank you. And how long have you been a sergeant at Londonderry PD?
In that role, just about 6 months or so.
How long have you worked at Londonderry Police Department in total?
Going on 6 years, I believe.
Did you have any law enforcement experience before that?
I did, yes. I was employed by the Samberton Police Department in New Hampshire.
So, all in all, how long have you been an officer?
July 1 will be 10 years.
Did you graduate from Police Academy in New Hampshire?
I did, yes.
When was that?
December of 2013.
Can you tell us today what are some of your duties and responsibilities?
As a patrol sergeant, I just oversee an assigned shift that I'm assigned to, make sure officers are doing their duties they're supposed to, correct paperwork, just day-to-day operations of a shift.
In October of 2019, you were working at Londonderry Police Department, right?
Correct, yes.
What was your assignment at that time?
That time I was a field training officer.
Tell us about some of your duties and responsibilities then.
As an FTO, you're assigned to a newer officer that could be from another department or just newly hired officer. You're just there to train them, make sure they're ready to be a solo officer on their own.
Did you ever respond to calls for service?
I did, yes.
Can you kind of explain for the court what that means, a call for service?
So call for service, somebody calls 911 or just directed to the police department. It gets dispatched out to police officers in their cars, and then they respond to the address or wherever it may be, just to respond to the call that was given out.
If I could have just one moment, Your Honor. Did you investigate crimes at that time?
I did, yes.
Okay. Was that in-depth investigations or something else?
At that level, as just a police officer, as a regular patrol officer, and it's not an in-depth investigation, no. Just a cursory information.
I want to draw your attention to October 1st of 2019. Were you working that day?
I was, yes.
We're just turning on our technology. Sure. Bear with us.
Does he have chew in his mouth?
Second shift, which is 2 to 10:30 p.m.
At some point, did you become involved in the investigation of the shooting death of Luis Garcia?
I did, yes.
Tell us about that. How did you become involved?
At 2:28, there was a call given by dispatch for a welfare check at 15 Ridgemont Drive in Londonderry, and my trainee and I responded to that location for that call that was given out.
Okay. I want to go back to a couple of things you said in there. So a welfare check, what does that mean?
So welfare check, it could be a number of things. People call just concerned about whoever it is they're calling about. Could be minor things or serious calls for such as this one that we're talking about right now.
Okay. And you said you were going to a 15 Ridgemont Drive in Londonderry?
Correct, yes.
Is that a town in New Hampshire?
It is, yes.
What county is that in?
Rockingham County.
Did you become aware at some point during that day, maybe not initially, but whose house that was that you were going to?
I did, yes, I did after the fact.
Whose house was that?
It's the Castiglione residence, owned by Mark Castiglione.
Did any other officers respond with you to 15 Ridgemont Drive?
Yes.
Who was that?
My trainee, Officer Cameron Verrier, and then Officer Matthew Morin responded as well.
Do you recall who arrived at the residence first?
Officer Morin arrived just moments before Officer Verrier and I did.
What was he doing when you arrived? Matt Morin, what was he doing?
Officer Morin, excuse me, he was in the driveway of 15 Ridgemont Drive speaking with the calling party, just gathering additional information so we knew what was going on.
Did you know who the calling party was at that time?
I know now. At the time I didn't, but it was a Danielle Castiglione.
Okay. Does she go by any other name?
Not that I am aware of.
Did you know her relationship to that residence?
I did not.
Were you given, like you said earlier, the welfare check? What was that regarding? Who were you being asked to check on?
So we didn't know who we were being asked to check on. It was initially just a welfare check, and then additional information came out from dispatch that there was, quote-unquote, 2 people down inside of the residence.
After you arrived on scene, did you learn where the 2 people who were, quote-unquote, down, did you learn where they were inside the residence?
Yes, we did.
Okay. And where were they discovered?
If you're looking at the front of the residence, it was the top left bedroom on the 2nd floor.
Okay. Who pointed out that room to you?
Officer Morin was speaking with Danielle Castiglione, and while she was speaking to him, she pointed to that room on the residence.
Did you go inside that residence?
Yes.
Before we get into what happened once you were inside, can you just describe the house for us a little bit?
It's a single-family home, split-level style home, so when you enter, you can either go up or down the stairs to the basement or to the 2nd floor, or the main floor, rather.
Okay, that main floor, what's the layout of that area?
At the top of the stairs, towards your right is the, the living room and a kitchen area, and then down there's a hallway to the left at the top of the stairs, which has a couple bedrooms and a bathroom.
What door did you go into the house through?
The front door.
Was that open at the time?
Yes.
So once you went inside, where did you go?
Once we were inside the residence, we went up the stairs to the main floor, and we took a left down that hallway that was described to us where the subjects were.
What did you observe in that hallway as you went down it?
As we were going down the hallway, I noticed that the bedroom that was described, the back left bedroom, the door was open, and also noticed a white, called a drawer organizer, but it's like a cabinet, white plastic cabinet in the hallway.
Did you notice anything of significance around that drawer?
On the top of the cabinet was a black semi-automatic Glock handgun.
What did you do when you observed that handgun?
I called it out to the other officers so they were aware of its presence there.
Did you observe anything about that gun, its make, its manufacturer, anything like that?
I noticed there was a Glock, which is the same type firearm we carry, so I recognized it that way.
Okay. Did you go inside that bedroom or the room that Danielle Castiglione had described to you?
Yes.
Was the door open to that room at the time?
Yes, the door was open.
What did you observe about the condition of that room?
It was being remodeled, and at least being painted. I know that. All the furniture in the room was pushed in towards the middle. And then there was a painter's tarp or cloth, if you will, on the floor, consistent with obviously being painted.
Was there anyone inside that room?
Yes.
Okay. Tell us about that.
There was a subject who was later identified as Brandon Castiglione, was inside of the bedroom, just a couple feet from the doorway. He was on the floor. It's kind of hard to describe, but like a fetal type position on his hands and knees with his hands on his head on the ground. He was kind of trembling. And then there was another subject. I could only see his legs sticking out from behind a cabinet or a dresser that was in the middle of the room.
That first person you described, male in a fetal position, I think is how you put it, on his hands and knees. Do you see that person in the courtroom today?
I do, yes.
Could you point him out and describe a piece of clothing he's wearing?
He's wearing a white dress shirt.
The record reflect the witness has identified the defendant.
What are you doing?
No objection.
Good job.
Was the defendant moving when you saw him there in that room?
Like I said, he was trembling. Just small movements, nothing of significance.
Did you hear him saying anything when you went inside?
He was mumbling. I couldn't make out what it was that he was saying.
Could you determine a general gist of what it was that he was doing there on the floor?
It was definitely odd, him being there. It was, as far as what he was doing on the floor, I don't know.
And I think you said that you saw someone else's legs in the room?
Correct, yes.
Did anyone, could you describe the position of those legs that you saw?
So like I said, they were sticking out from behind a dresser. I could tell by the orientation that the subject was on his back, and his legs were bent.
Did anyone check on that person?
Yes, Officer Morin did.
Was Officer Morin the first person to go in that room?
Yes.
Okay. And when you say checked on him, how did he do that?
Officer Morin walked around. The furniture was all pushed in towards the middle. I couldn't see him, but I heard him say that it appeared that the male was deceased.
Was that male laying on his back as you described it, was he ever identified?
Yes.
Who was that?
Luis Garcia.
At that point, or at any point, did you fully enter the room?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Where were you positioned inside the room?
I stayed behind Mr. Castiglione while Officer Morin checked on Mr. Garcia.
And that's behind the defendant?
Yes, correct, yes.
As you stood there, what did you observe from that position?
From that position, a few feet, or just a couple feet from the defendant's head, was a single shell casing on the floor.
You said earlier you had seen that black pistol, the Glock, outside in the hallway. How close to the defendant would you estimate that handgun was?
Several feet. It wasn't far at all, 5-6 feet. I don't know exactly, but that'd be my guess.
You said earlier that you recognized it as a Glock.
Correct.
May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes, you may.
Here comes the murder weapon. Allegedly.
Showing you what's marked for identification as States 4. Do you recognize this photograph?
I do, yes.
And what is in this photograph?
This is the cabinet that I described with the handgun on top of it.
Is this photograph a fair and accurate representation of how that handgun in that hallway appeared on the day you went into 15 Ridgemont Drive?
It is, yes.
Move to strike the ID and enter as a full exhibit.
No objection.
Okay, it's a full exhibit. You may publish it to the jury.
So he moves to strike the ID and enter as a full exhibit.
So I'll draw your attention to the monitor here. We're looking at a slide of States 4. If you don't mind, Judge, could I have the witness step down?
Go right ahead, sure.
If you could step down, we'll approach the monitor.
Let's wander away from the microphones. That'll help the audio greatly.
Can the jurors all see that okay? Is there a glare? Sometimes there's a glare with these lights. Okay.
And if you could just point out where in that photograph the handgun that you observed is depicted.
Right here on top of the cabinet. Right here.
Does that red circle now, does that accurately reflect where that handgun is?
Yes.
Okay. And you can step back up to the stand. Thank you. Apologize, the monitor is so far away, but. Relative to where that handgun is, where was the room where you found the defendant?
The room, you can see it in the left portion of the picture, the doorway. That is the room that the defendant was in.
Does that green oval reflect where that doorway was?
Yes.
May I approach again, Your Honor?
Yes, you may.
Showing you now what's marked for identification as States 26. Do you recognize this photograph?
Yes.
Okay, and what's in this photograph?
This is the top of the cabinet with the handgun.
Is this a fair and accurate representation of the handgun as you observed it on that day, October 1st, 2019?
Yes.
Move to strike the ID and enter as full exhibit.
No objection.
Okay, full exhibit. May publish to the jury.
Showing you a slide of States 26. And again, just to go back, how close to the defendant was that handgun in your best estimation?
Just several feet, 5-6 feet.
So you mentioned earlier, standing in that doorway, you had made another observation inside the room?
Correct.
What was that?
There was a single shell casing just a couple of feet from the top of the defendant's head.
Okay. Can you kind of describe for us just briefly what a shell casing is?
So shell it's the portion of the bullet when you fired from a gun is ejected out the side, and the projectile, the actual bullet, continues out the barrel.
May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes, ma'am.
Showing you what's marked for identification as States 109. Do you recognize this?
I do, yes.
And what is this photo of?
It's a photo of the bedroom with all the furniture pushed in, the shell casing, the painter's cloth, and the decedent.
Is this a fair and accurate representation of that last bedroom on the left that you entered on October 1st, 2019?
Yes.
Okay. Move to strike the ID and enter as a full exhibit, Judge.
Any objection?
May I just say?
I'm sorry, counsel, what was the number on that one?
109.
109?
And I apologize, Judge. Was there an objection?
There was not an objection.
Okay, it's admitted.
Thank you. I'm showing you now a slide of States 109. Does that photo, I believe you said it already, but does that photo show the casing that you observed as you stood in that room?
Excuse me. Yes, it does.
Okay, and once more I'll ask you to step down if you could, and it's small in the photograph, so if you could point it out for us.
Before that happens, can we just approach briefly, Your Honor?
Yes, you may.
Thank you.
Okay, let's see if I can fix some of this background noise really quickly. Struggling. Okay, yes, the tape on the items of the cords, that is going to fall off. That is not enough tape to hold things in place. Well, that's about the best I can do. This audio is so bad. You can't see me. I'm here. I was just reclining a little bit. Got the words up at the top of the screen because we have the closed captions on for those who would like to turn the audio off and still follow along. Yeah, if I dozed off in the old chair, I'd fall off my chair. In this one, I've been able to close my eyes just briefly, and that's all right. The tape they should be using is called gaff tape, G-A-F-F. Usually have some, but I don't have it right now.
So if you would, you could step down. And then in this photograph, if you could just point out where that casing was that you saw. Right there on the floor. Is that right? Sort of
leg alert.
Where it's located?
Yes, it does.
You can have another seat. Although the exact spot may not be depicted in that photograph, if you could just kind of describe generally where the defendant was located when you found him in that room.
He would have been towards the bottom portion of the photo, with his head oriented towards the defendant and his feet back towards the wall, down in that position that I described.
I apologize. I think you said that his head was oriented towards the defendant.
I'm sorry, the decedent. I apologize.
Okay, so he was his head was oriented towards Luis Garcia.
Yes, correct.
Okay. After observing everything that you've described for us, the Glock on the set of drawers outside the room, the defendant on his hands and knees trembling, that shell casing, and Luis Garcia apparently dead inside the room, what was done after that?
I placed Mr. Castiglione into handcuffs, just pending investigation to detain him.
What was done with the defendant after that?
He was stood up and escorted out of the residence by Officer Morin.
What did you do after that point?
Officer Berry and I just maintained security of the room, pending full investigation by other officers.
Okay. Did you have any other involvement in this case?
We maintained security outside of the residence afterwards. That's about it.
One moment, Your Honor.
We're just flying through this case.
Nothing further, Judge.
Cross-examination.
May we approach one more time?
Yes, you may.
Thank you.
Okay, they're flipping the audio over to white noise, basically, which I think they have running all the time in the courtroom from the sounds of it. It sounds like a waterfall in the courtroom. They are either using ambient noise mics that just pick up everything in the courtroom, or they're using the onboard camera mic, even in a shotgun format. You're getting a lot of echo, no direct audio into microphones, but at least we can hear what's going on, at least when the feed doesn't jump. Just me had a roofing crew not pick up all their nails and had to take the dog to the emergency vet. Oh my goodness. Mrs. H, we on our last home, we had the roof replaced right before we moved. It was, it looks like the jury gets a little break. It was awful. You have to bring magnets. I used a metal detector to clear my yard from nails. have a screenshot of CC, the closed caption reading, Garcia Bread is not guilty. This audio is so bad. Looks like they all have their own cup here. That's a nice to start. Bailiff wants a drink as well, apparently.
Can we have this document? Yes.
Wow, they're calling a break. We don't know exactly what's happening, but the judge, the defense said, "Can we approach?" They have not yet started the cross of the witness.
These I can keep in my office, and I can't walk around in my office. That has to be locked up every day. Okay. So I just, and I have to go down and get it. See, somebody, a monitor has to receive it. Nobody in the office can. Okay. So, and if I'm in here, I can have one of the other girls.
So we have the clerk of court is explaining something. Apparently, it's now time to leave. We're being shown the exit. This is interesting. The defense counsel says when we approach, they approached twice, and that was it. They approached twice, and they just called it quits for the day. I don't know. I don't know if it's over. I really don't. Let me take a look here. These guys are a little further behind. Oh, wait, no, that's the same feed. This is the same feed if we were to watch from these guys. Pours drinks for everybody. Bailiff comes over, says, "Hey, time to go." Everyone's standing around the courtroom and says, "Hey, it's time to go." He says, "Do I have to go in there with him?" He says, "Yeah, it's fine. It's fine." He says, "Can I take my notebook with me?" And then he looks at the bailiff and says, "Hey, can he have his notebook with him?" The bailiff says, "Sure." He says, "All right, take those with you." And there he goes, "Thank you," and he's off. So I think we're back to waiting again. Not sure exactly what's happening. He might be changing his plea. He's like, "You know what? I changed my mind. They do have evidence against me." Okay, that's the wrong audio. That's the old audio. That's the old one. It says these have to go to my office. It has to be locked up every day. That was the court clerk speaking right there. The loud typist that we've been hearing. That's why I like reading James Patterson books, says Dodie. No fire drill. It is a little strange courtroom. The very little delay. I mean, they started and they've just been pushing through. A lot of times the judge will say, "Okay, we'll do opening statements, then we're going to stop. We'll give the jury a break." This is a pretty quick break. I mean, and for the defendant to be taken over into the holding cell during the break is a little strange as well. Audio is horrible. Okay, Norja Rastami. Yes, the audio is horrible. Oftentimes, first day of court, the audio is bad. You have generally courts don't work very well with production. Okay, this is the whole idea of having audio and video in a courtroom is still relatively new, even though we've been doing it for years. It's still new to many courts. And so what happens is the judge comes in and says, "Okay, you can have a camera in the courtroom, you can bring your mics, we can do all that, that's going to be fine, but you have to have everything set up before we start." get everything in place. And so the production crew is like, okay, they walk into the courtroom like, well, here's the pedestal. We're going to set a mic here. We're going to set a camera there. We'll have a camera back here. The judge signs off on the positions. Everybody comes in. The first lawyer up grabs the pedestal, drags it to the other side of the room, and starts talking. And suddenly your mic's not in position if you're using a shotgun mic. Your camera can't get the right angle without showing the jury. It's constant a nightmare. And so what's going to happen, hopefully, is that after court today, they're going to go to the judge and say, look, just heads up, things changed. Can we move this? Can we have a mic here? Can we tie into this audio system because we're having a lot of problems? They can fix it. It's possible. The judge doesn't like doing a lot of work that way. So hopefully the production crew from Court TV is going to go up there and just say, hey, here's our suggestion, Judge. Can you sign off on this? This will fix all these issues. And maybe it'll be good. Ivan's on the phone, but I'm not plugged in yet. Hang on.
Call from.
Hey, Ivan, are you there?
Yes, sir. How you doing?
I'm doing well.
You know, have you ever recalled having a break this early after opening statements, or am I hallucinating, or what's happening here?
We've seen early breaks. We've seen counsel approach little bench conference or sidebars pretty early on, but never one where the defendant got hauled off to the holding cell. I mean, they stood up to excuse the jury. Maybe this is going to be the new normal for this trial. Maybe these bench conferences, the defendant can't hear what's going on. Usually they are allowed to hear. Sometimes, like in the Mark Jensen trial, I think it was, and I'm trying to think of another one. The defendant, the Florida stabber guy. Who was he? Stabbed his girlfriend down in Florida. Yeah. He had headphones specifically so he could hear what was going on at these sidebars.
Well, you would think it would be his right, his privy, like it's his defense, right?
Yes.
Like you would think he would be privy to every interaction on the docket that was there. But just a random thought that like it's kind of like an off the because we're kind of like in a religious scene trial here. It got me thinking. So there are certain faiths that have to pray every few hours, right? How would that work with court? Have we ever seen like what specifically comes to mind is like Muslim trials? You know what I mean? They have to pray a certain amount of times per day. Have we ever seen where they had to like take a break so the defendant could do that? It got me thinking. Like I guess I can't ever recall a situation like that, but I was just curious about that. Can you ever remember anything like that?
I've never seen a trial where they've stopped so the defendant can so they can respect the defendant's religious beliefs.
But you would think they would have to, right? Like they would have to, like this is America, right? Like you would have to abide by their. Like, I guess it just got me thinking. Like I guess I can't ever remember. Like the only reason I ask is I've worked at a few jobs. Before we owned our, before I got locked up and we owned our own business. Like I remember working a few jobs at factories where there was like a large population of Somalian refugees who worked at the plant that I worked at. They were brought over here through a program and whatever, and so they had to like every it was basically determined off the sun. It was never like a specific time. It always like it had to do with the sun. I don't know the logistics of it, and it doesn't matter. But you get my drift.
I don't think we can respect other people, allow them to worship how they may, but the court doesn't have to stop and change everything,
Okay.
They try to accommodate beliefs as much as possible, but they don't have to bend over backwards. And as long as the government is not fostering one religion over another, I think they're fine. So it looks like we just got a break. Zachariah Anderson was another trial that did have a break. Thank you for pointing that out in chat. I Rescue Dog said ZA had to stop the first day as well.
Oh, that's true. That was just kind of like a random curiosity question, not really relevant, but. The other thing is can somebody please get this poor man a coat and tie and tell him he doesn't have to choke his neck out? It's going to be a long trial.
Undo the top button if you're not going to wear a tie. That's just.
Yeah, you don't have to choke yourself the first day, dude. We all know you're serious. Like, come on, loosen up a little bit. Like, it's going to be a minute. Like, holy Toledo, Ohio. All right. I love you. I look forward to this trial. Thanks for doing all you can with the sound. I know you're tweaking it the best you can. So
I'm trying. I've got 3 bandpass filters on, notch filters on, trying to mute out some of the louder frequencies in the courtroom. But I don't have a spectrum A little spectrograph that
It'll
can show
just,
it. So
it'll just make us that much more grateful for the trials that have quality sound, you know? That's how
One day we're going to get one with great video, great sound, and great content. So far, we haven't had that trifecta, but it's coming.
So yeah, we need the trifecta. You know, well, hey, what's the song? 2 out of 3 ain't bad, right?
You know, we'll take
So
what we can
go.
get. Awesome. Thank you,
All
Ivan.
right.
Good talking to you, my friend.
All right. Bye.
Bye. Let's see. A quick update where we are. We just had opening statements, and we've started through the first witness, Mr. Andrew Phillips, who's the responding officer who showed up on scene and found the defendant in the room. Appeared to be mumbling, praying. They say on his hands and knees. Others said in the fetal position, incoherently mumbling, which has been described also as speaking in tongues, which it sounds different to me from my experience of interacting with people who have this as a regular part of their worship. Anyway, so interesting take. We heard the prosecution say this is an open and shut case, that they walked into basically a locked house where the defendant lived and the decedent was there doing some work. The defendant was there with the defendant's gun with one bullet. It was his gun. It was, just open and shut. And then the defense got up there and says, no, it's not open and shut because there's a lot of things the police didn't do. Like they had my client arrested within 5 minutes and they didn't investigate, and all the things they didn't test. We've heard this before. We heard this in Alex Murdaugh's trial. We heard this in Zachariah Anderson's trial. They don't test everything. They only test enough to say, yeah, this is enough. We'll get a conviction on what we need. We don't need to do anything else. We don't need to test every single swab from the house to say, yep, there's more of the defendant's DNA. On the gun is usually enough. Fingerprints on the gun, usually enough. So we'll see. Apparently, Lori is going to testify. Lori Daybell. I cannot wait. Brandy and JT, is she testifying today? Is that going on right now? Because obviously we won't hear about that till tonight when the audio gets released. Sylvia McKellar, welcome to the gallery. Good to have you here. Any chance the defendant is asking for a plea deal? No, I don't think so. I think this is just an oral break. Should be about another 7 minutes according to some of our court feeds. So it looks like they just asked for a break. Apparently linked to a shooting at this church 3 weeks after the murder as well. I think it was 12 days after the murder. Somebody, I don't know the relation. Is the shooter in the next one, was he related to the victim or the defendant?
Riley.
Riley, how are you doing?
Hey, I'm doing good. I just wanted to say real quick, because I know that you had just told everyone that Lori will testify.
Yeah.
I'm seeing on Twitter, Nate Eaton, the reporter who's at the trial.
Yes,
he
from
just
East Idaho
tweeted
News.
Lori Vallow. He said that Lori Vallow Daybell will not testify.
Ooh. Not.
Yeah, so I just want to clear that up for you guys.
So that's the opposite of will, if I remember correctly. So Lori not testifying, that would be not as exciting. But it sounds like there was a little bit of confusion. Maybe somebody was hasty in their tweet and it sent out the fire that way.
Yeah.
Good to know. Thanks for the update.
I went ahead and posted in the Discord too, so everyone can see. But yeah, I was just calling in to clarify that for you guys.
Thank you. Yeah, we get updates here, and sometimes we miss a word or two, and it makes all the world of difference in that. So
yeah,
I'm not
no
surprised,
worries.
but thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, bye guys.
Bye. So also breaking news, she's not going to testify, which would be better. Eggs and Spam, welcome to the gallery. Good to have you here as a member. Please take your seat on the front row. Let's see. Either way, it's gonna be fun. There, JT says there are conflicting reports on this. Some say yes, some say no. I'm waiting official discussion on this because it's not on live updates I follow. Yeah, so we'll see. I guess it's still up in the air. I wonder who is saying yes and who is saying no. There might be an insider who's leaking something. I would say this would be most likely. It's rare for the defendant to testify. It's rarely in their interest to testify because they can be ripped apart. Okay, but Nate, I believe he's from East Idaho News, is a great source. He's covering this trial from day one. And I think he was also involved in the investigation of this trial. Nate is saying no. Go with the caller, not me. I wrote that before the caller. I don't think there was a threat here at all. Everyone stood up for the jury to leave. There's no rush leaving the courtroom. No one was filing out of the courtroom. My poor cow. It's being brutalized. Really. It's still the same shape as a cow, although it's a little bit saggy now. It's not as firm skinned as it used to be. It's a little bit stretched out. Ivan stayed at a Holiday Inn last night. Does that matter? It sure does. Means you're on your A game. We thought this happened in a church initially, Lisa, but apparently it was in the defendant's home. But the relationship between the defendant and the victim may have began at church, like a religious relationship of some sort. Content Lasagna says, Recovery Addict, you could probably get ZA's brother to guest on your stream. He's done multiple guest appearances across LawTube. I've seen that. I watched him on DUI Guy. And he's a very smart guy. And obviously he has one thing in mind, and that's to free his brother. He feels that Zachariah Anderson is not guilty. I do disagree with him on that. For me, it was not a stretch. I realize a lot of people say that there's not enough evidence to convict, just one drop of blood. And that's something that his brother has said, of all these, 750 pieces of evidence that they had in this trial, only one connects Zachariah Anderson to the victim. But that one drop was a drop of blood in his van. And that's a pretty big connection to me. And then with all the other circumstantial evidence, for me, it did not cause me to hesitate to act. You need a squeeze cow made by Kong Dog Toys. That would destroy my arms. My hand would break. RA cow is utterly being manhandled. Haha, Lisa, pretty good. It's obviously fit to stand trial. It is a big drop of blood. It's something that you can't. It's not a numbers game where mathematically you weigh the evidence that connects versus does not connect. It doesn't work like that. If there is a connection, that connection can be rock solid. And even though there's only one piece of evidence, that could be it.
Just in case there's something I missed, to make sure that they don't capture any of the conversations between counsel. Every now and then when the camera pans over there, it's looking at the big screen. There are occasional shots of just from his chest up during the openings and during the openings, but nothing that expresses any kind of content. So I'm watching for that. A lot of times when the camera's pointed over there, it's actually not even active. They're using the cameras in the back to catch the witness testimony. So the fact that it's kind of sitting over there, it's not even active. So I'll be monitoring it for it, so the deputy clerk be monitoring for it. And if I see anything that...
And they just killed the audio. Okay, so they're talking. It looks like the defense has an issue about the cameras.
That's the thing that I have in place to monitor compliance, so you know. Thank you, Your Honor. Okay. All right. Are we ready to proceed?
Yes.
All right. Thank you.
There were concerns about the cameras showing what they shouldn't.
We might be a little premature. They're not lined up.
Jury's not here. Stephen Blevins, thank you for gifting another membership. Thank you very much. Just to remind everybody, pickle's not politics. This is so loud. Just want to turn the volume down for a minute, just so I can not hear it. The white noise level is so high. It's awful. Hey, Buckingham, one day we'll have trials from Canada we'll be able to watch. I think it's coming. There are laws against the abuse of toy animals. Not in North Carolina. It's all legit. I'm good.
All rise for the jury, please.
Counsel?
Thank you, Matt. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
How are you today?
I'm well. How are you?
Good, thank you. So I'm going to back up a little bit and talk to you about some of the things that you talked about on your direct, okay?
Sure.
And can you hear me okay? Because I feel like you're very far away.
Yes, I can. Yeah.
Okay. So you talked about getting information from dispatch about a welfare call, is that right?
Correct, yes.
And that was on October 1st, 2019?
Correct.
Around 2:28 in the afternoon?
Yes.
You were working Sector 3?
Yes.
What's Sector 3?
That's the southern portion of Londonderry.
Okay, so were you pretty close to the home you were being dispatched to?
It's not. We could have been closer. We were still several miles away. It's a larger area to cover, but yeah.
Is it fair to say it took about 10 minutes to get there?
Correct. Yes.
You testified on direct that you were an FTO.
Yes.
Field Training Officer?
Correct. Yep.
And you were training Officer Verrier, is that correct?
Yes.
How long had he been a police officer at that point?
Oh, I don't want to take a guess. I know he had worked at another agency before that, but I don't want to guess how many years he has had on.
Okay, that's fair. Were you two in the same cruiser?
Yes.
Okay. Do you know how long he had been with the department at that point?
I would say just several weeks.
Okay. You testified that Officer Morin got there slightly before the two of you.
Correct, yep.
Is moment sort of a fair statement to make?
It is, yeah.
Okay. I mean, you got there within a minute or two?
Yes.
Okay. Do you remember, and I know it was a few years ago, but do you remember what you were wearing that day?
Just full police uniform.
Okay, how about footwear?
Boots. I've had several pairs since, but...
Okay, are there standard issue boots, or
no.
are they your own?
You buy your own.
Okay. How about gloves? Were you wearing gloves that day?
Normally when we go to calls, we put on gloves. If I did or not, I don't want to take a guess.
Okay. Do you know if either Officer Morin or Officer Verrier are wearing gloves?
I believe Officer Verrier was, because we've had this discussion.
So the information you had when you were going into the house was that there wasn't a person or persons down.
Correct.
And that there was blood around one of the people.
Yes, correct.
Okay. Those were essentially the only specifics you had at that point.
Yes.
And so the goal at that initial point was to go in and render aid if you could. Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay. And so the order of, I guess, the three of you going into the home, I just want to make sure I have it right, it's Officer Morin?
Correct.
And then you and Officer Verrier, or is it sort of a single file thing?
It was single file.
Okay. Do you remember which order you were in that?
I believe I was in the middle.
Okay. And then there's a stairway that goes up to the main living?
Yes.
And then the stairway also goes down to additional living, is that fair?
Yes.
Okay. And you were all heading to the bedroom at the top floor end of the house on the left?
Correct.
Okay. Were you checking the rooms as you went to make sure no one else was there?
No, because we had information they were in that room and that door was open.
Okay. And so the only information you had was that there were two people there?
Yes, yeah.
So no need or feeling of emergency for anyone else being in the house. Is that your testimony?
Our initial objective was just to get to those two people in that room, and that's obviously we discovered that and everything changed. So.
Okay. Do you remember what the carpet was like on the way to the end of the hallway?
I don't. I'm sorry.
So when you got to the bedroom, what you testified to was that Brandon was essentially in the threshold, but right inside the doorway. Is that fair?
Yes.
And there was a bunch of furniture in the center of the room?
Correct.
Furniture was covered with tarps, drop cloths?
I don't recall if the furniture, I know the floor was.
But you don't remember where the drop cloths were with respect to the furniture?
I don't. I'm sorry.
Okay, that's okay. And you could see legs sticking out from the dresser?
Correct.
So at some point, Officer Moore decided to sort of take the lead in terms of seeing what was going on with Mr. Garcia. Is that right?
Correct, yes.
He couldn't see what was going on, so he tried to move the drop cloths. Is that right?
I don't know if he moved anything. I don't know.
You didn't see him move the drop cloth?
Not that I recall right now, no.
Okay. And when he walked around to get a better look about what was going on, was that about the same time you saw the plastic organizer with the gun on it?
No, I saw that prior to us going into the room.
Okay, so right off the bat you saw the gun?
Yes.
And you announced that there was a gun there?
Correct, yes.
Okay. Did you notice specifically any specific placement or positioning of the gun?
Just that it was on top of the dresser or whatever cabinet.
Okay. And while all of this is going on, and let me sort of back up a little bit, this was an occurrence that happened very quickly. Is that fair to say?
Can you rephrase that, I guess?
I can, absolutely. The moments that you go into the bedroom to when Brandon is taken out of the room. It was a very quick occurrence. Is that correct?
Quick, I wouldn't say quick. It wasn't hasty. We took our time. We were methodical about it. It wasn't rushed, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
So you have radios to call in what you're doing?
Yes.
To the station or to dispatch?
Correct.
Okay. So dispatch recorded that you were there at 14:37.
Correct.
Which would be 2:37.
Yep.
Almost 2:38 because it's actually 14:37 and 53 seconds.
Okay.
Okay. And then dispatch would have been notified when Brandon was taken into custody. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And so advising dispatch that one subject is detained is the taking into custody.
Yes, it is.
And so if that happened at 14:40 or 2:40, and you got there at almost 2:38, that's a pretty quick period of time, right?
Sure, you could say that.
A couple minutes. Okay. So you didn't initially see the shell casing, right?
When I saw it, I don't recall. I mean, I did see it. In what order, I don't know.
But you saw it somewhere inside the room beyond where Brandon was.
Correct.
Okay. So when the decision was made to detain Brandon, you put the handcuffs on him?
I did, yes.
Officer Morin helped him stand up?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay. And while that was going on, he was crying?
He was mumbling. I don't know what he was saying. Crying, I don't recall.
Okay. Could have been?
I don't recall.
So as Officer Morin was escorting Brandon out of the room, he told you and Officer Verrier to stay in the room and conduct room security or
Correct.
scene security.
Yes.
Scene security is making sure that no one else comes in.
Correct.
No one else, destroys any evidence.
Correct.
Alters anything.
Yep, correct.
And while you were waiting with Officer Verrier, he actually picked the gun up, right?
That was prior to us actually going into the room.
Okay. So before you even went into the room, he picked the gun up?
Correct.
Okay. He took the magazine out?
He did.
He put the magazine back in?
Yes.
And put the gun down?
Yes.
And because you were in such a sort of an emergency mode to render aid if you could, there was no documenting of where the gun was before that happened?
It was on top of the dresser, and he picked it up and it went back on top of the dresser. So it's orientation, I don't know. But
Okay, so you don't know about orientation, and the dresser obviously is bigger than the size of the gun.
Correct.
Okay. The other thing that I think you testified that you did was a log of who was coming into the room.
I believe Officer Barrier did that.
Okay, but you were with Officer Barrier, right?
Correct, yes.
Okay, so you have an idea of who came into the room.
Yeah, we were relieved fairly quickly from the room and then moved outside the residence.
Okay, so when
I can turn them
you're keeping a log of who's going into the room, or when he's keeping a log
Sorry if I don't.
who's going into the room, or when he's keeping a log of who's going into the room, that suggests that other people went into the room, right?
Either the room or the residence. I don't know if, I want to clarify, I don't know if the log was for just the entire residence or the specific bedroom where Mr. Garcia was.
So you didn't note the difference between the two?
Since Officer Barrier did the log, I don't know.
While you were at the residence doing scene security, there were several officers coming and going, correct?
Correct, yes.
We've already talked about Officer Moore and Officer Barrier. You.
Correct.
Officer Alfaro.
I believe he did show up, yes.
Detective Narciso Garcia.
Yes.
Detective Archambault.
Yes.
Detective Hallett.
Yes.
Lieutenant Tufo.
Yes.
Sergeant Hurley.
Yes.
Detective Tufo.
I believe so, yes.
All of those individuals were going into the home, correct?
Well, I don't know if they were going, I know they were on scene. What they did, I don't know.
Well, you were doing scene security, right?
Correct.
So you would know if they were going into the home or not.
From 4 years later, I don't recall exactly what they were doing.
Okay. So let's talk about security logs. You keep those security logs so that there is documentation about who is coming and going from the house, right?
Correct.
And to make sure that only essential people are going to and from the house.
Correct.
Because again, some of the issues is you don't want to damage any evidence that is potentially within the house.
Fine, Susan.
Okay. And so you're saying you don't remember and you don't have a security log for people coming into the residence?
I don't. Officer Barrier did that.
Okay. You're certain he did that?
I believe he did.
Okay. So the one other thing I want to talk to you about, at least in this instance, I do have a couple more things I'm sorry. You were actually working pretty late that night, right?
Correct, yes.
What did you say your shift was?
It's 2 to 10:30 p.m.
Okay, and so you were there well after 10:30?
Correct, yes.
Okay. One of the things that you did, that you did not talk about on direct, was that you actually went back to the police department when Brandon was served the body warrant. Is that right?
Yes.
Did you participate in that body warrant?
I was just in the booking room. Well, I believe the state police did that.
Okay. Were you watching?
I was just in the area. I don't know if I was watching or not.
Okay. Did you notice when Brandon was taken out of the room what he was wearing on his feet?
No, I don't.
Okay, so you don't remember if he had shoes on or not?
I don't.
Okay. I just want to talk to you briefly about the pictures that the state showed you, if I may. May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes, you may.
So I'm going to show you State's Exhibit 109, 26, and 4. So you testified that these are accurate pictures from what you saw on October 1st. Is that right?
Correct, yes.
Did you take these pictures?
No.
When were these pictures taken?
I do not know.
Okay. So you don't know where they came from?
Well, they came from the residence. I just don't know who took them.
Sorry. Better question. You don't know who took them?
Correct, yes.
Okay. Okay. And are you recalling specifically this glass shelf when you saw the room?
I don't recall exactly. I can't give you a definitive answer on that.
Okay. So you don't know if this is a fair and accurate depiction of the room when you were there?
It is. I just don't know that shelf it was moved. I have no idea. But
Okay. And when you say the shelving was moved, are we
we're
talking?
talking the pane of glass there. Apologize.
The pane of glass.
Yep.
Okay. Do you know where it was moved from?
I don't know.
Okay. I have a moment, Your Honor.
Yes, you may.
I just have 2 more questions. Do you know who the officer in charge was for the Londonderry Police Department during this investigation?
The patrol supervisor was Sergeant McCutcheon. As far as the investigation, I don't know who was in charge of that.
And how about, do you know when Major Crimes got to 15 Ridgemont?
No, I don't have the time.
Okay. And do you know who was leading that investigation?
I don't.
Okay. I have no further questions.
Any redirect?
Just a few questions, Your Honor. So defense counsel asked you a few questions about a security log that was being kept. Who did you say was keeping that?
Officer Verrier.
And do you know that for a fact, or is that best of your knowledge?
I believe based on reading reports, it was indicated Officer Verrier was the one that did that.
Okay. We went through on direct and then on cross about how you were his field training officer that day. Is that
Correct,
right?
yes.
Okay. But were you assigning him that task?
I did not. I believe one of the detectives did.
Were you involved in the log keeping at all that day?
No.
Do you know where Officer Verrier was when he was apparently keeping this log?
I believe we were outside of the residence, but to be certain, I don't.
When you say outside of the residence, was it at the front door?
The front door, yes.
Okay. And then also on cross, so defense counsel went through a little bit about the timing of things from when you first went in that room and then when the defendant was taken out of the house. And it was about 2 minutes. Is that about right?
Correct.
Okay. So looking at the court's clock here, it's reading 3:10:50. Let's go through 2 minutes. So at 3:11, we'll start. Now.
Are we doing 2 minutes of silence here? This is always the strangest little display they do. We've seen this in a previous trial as well. Just want to turn them down a little bit while the noise is just going. We've seen this in a previous trial where they say, how long is 2 minutes, type thing. We're going to sit here for 2 minutes just so we can let everyone feel what 2 minutes is. And it feels like forever when nothing's happening. If I were telling the story, though, I wouldn't have time to finish it. He does look a little young, though. We're waiting. Yes, this guy has terrible recall. He is not the main investigator. He's the new cop. He's the first one that showed up on scene. He showed up and immediately called for backup, basically. And they're asking him all the questions as if he was the scene investigator, the one who kept... He was the guy who was like, hey, grab a piece of paper and write down the names of people who are here. It's the job they give to the new cop. We saw it in the Alex Murdaugh trial as well. The guy's like, I don't even have a piece of paper. I'm brand new. What do I do? He's like, you just write down people's names and the time they show up. That's what he did. He did walk in, see the crime scene, and do that. So I think we're getting close to a minute and a half right now. So it's not a bad thing that he doesn't know anything. It would be weird if he did. Someone starts singing the Jeopardy theme. Castiglione's father's house, where Castiglione lived there. He shot the guy that was painting the house.
3:13.
Okay.
That was 2 minutes?
Correct.
Okay. Is that what you meant, I think, on cross when you said that your actions inside that room were not rushed?
Correct, yes.
And that you and the 2 other officers in there were methodical?
Yes.
One moment, Your Honor. Nothing further.
Anything based on that?
Just briefly, Your Honor.
Okay. I'll give you 2 minutes.
Plenty of time.
I'll take it. So I just want to clarify a few things. When you talked about being outside the door and being with Officer Verrier, you were in fact training him, is that right?
Yes.
Okay, so you were with him as this is all going on.
When we were inside the room, yes.
And when you were outside standing at the door with him?
When we were outside the residence, I was being pulled in other directions as well, so I wasn't with him the entire time.
So what you had testified to is you were doing outdoor scene security, and my understanding it was with with Officer Verrier. That's not what you were doing?
It is, but I wasn't with him the entire time.
We just sat here for 10 minutes in silence, right? 2 minutes in silence.
Correct,
Right?
yes.
10 minutes to me. But 2 minutes in silence.
Yes.
Okay. You obviously were not sitting and reflecting in the 2 minutes that you were trying to render emergency aid to an individual on October 1st, 2019. Is that right?
Correct.
It was a situation where you were all working together to try to figure out what was going on. Is that correct?
Yes.
And there were some moving parts, and it was not a time where you were sitting around looking at the clock.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
You may sit down. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Your Honor, may this witness be released?
I have no objection.
Okay. Thank you, sir. You may be excused.
Your Honor, at this time, the state calls Mrs. Frances Pastana.
Can barely hear who this is. Francis something? I think I'm going to do an analysis of all the things they're doing wrong as far as audio and video on this, if you'd like it.
Mrs. Pastana, can you hear me okay from up there?
Just a little.
Okay. Do you need to speak up a little bit louder?
Please.
You got it. If at any point in time you can't hear me, just let me know, or I can move closer if that helps as well.
Okay.
I believe previously you had indicated you might have a little bit of a blockage in one of your
And
ears.
this ear.
Okay. A little bit more to this side then.
She could just turn her head.
If you would please, actually, for a moment.
Counsel, you want to swear the witness?
I was about to say, Your Honor, I was going to swear the witness. And I was going to ask Your Honor if it was all right if she remained sitting at this time.
She may, yes.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Pastano, if you would please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony that you will give this jury will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you very much. Would you please state your full name and spell both your first and your last name for the record since we're being recorded?
Okay, it's Frances Pastana, Frances. Pastana is P as in Paul, Estana.
Mrs. Pastano, where do you live? What town do you live in?
Derry, New Hampshire.
Okay. Where's your address in Derry?
10 Derryfield Road.
How long have you been living there?
35 years.
35 years. Okay. Are you married right now?
Yes.
Okay. What's your husband's name?
Jeffrey.
How long have you been married to Jeffrey?
35 years.
How many children do you have between the two of you?
7.
7. And how many grandchildren?
grandchildren, I think 7, I think. I can't remember.
Okay.
And I got quite a few great-grandkids.
Okay. Let me ask you, are you retired now?
Yes.
Okay. At one point, what were some of the different types of jobs that you've held before you were retired?
I worked for Western Electric, AT&T, and Lucent. And then when they closed, I worked part-time 16 years at Macy's in Manchester.
Okay. Brandon Castiglione is one of your grandchildren, correct?
Yes.
Right. And who is his father?
Mark Castiglione.
What town do they live in?
Londonderry.
And the address in Londonderry, do you remember the street address?
I think it's 15 Ridgemont Drive.
Okay. About how far away is Mark's house from your house? If we were to get in a car and drive there together, about how long would it take you?
10, 15 minutes, no, something like that.
Okay. And does Brandon have any sisters?
Yes.
Okay, who's that?
Danielle.
Now, does she live in New Hampshire as well, or does she live somewhere else?
She lives in Mass.
In Mass, okay. In October of 2019, was Brandon living at the house with his father on Ridgemont Drive?
Yes.
Okay. Now, I want to talk about somebody else for a few minutes. And I'd like to talk about Luis Garcia. How did you first meet Luis Garcia?
At NEP Church in Pelham.
Okay. And who was he married to?
Patty.
Patty. And let me ask you, would you call him Luis? Would you call him Garcia? What would you call him? I want to make sure I'm using your
call him Garcia. I used to call him Garcia.
You used to call him Garcia. All right. Then for today, I'm going to call him Garcia then as well. I want to make sure I'm using your words, okay? All right. You said you went at New England Pentecostal in Pelham. That's where you met?
Yes.
Okay. Did you become friends with Mr. and Mrs. Garcia?
Yes.
Okay. And at any point in time, were they living at your house?
Yes.
Okay. When was that?
To be honest with you, I don't remember.
Okay.
I really don't.
If we could kind of put a time frame on that, would it be months before this all happened or years before this all happened?
Oh, they lived with us for several months because they had no place to live, so we invited them to stay at our house. And everything was good.
Okay. How long had you been going to New England Pentecostal before this all happened?
Maybe 10 years.
10 years. Okay. And other than meeting the Garcias through the church, what were some of the activities that you would do together with them?
I was the greeter at the church, and he was a minister. He did odds and ends at the church, painting and stuff like that, helping out. And
with that, what are some of the different type of services or functions that you would go together to the church to have?
Oh, they had like ceremony type things. I can't remember them offhand, but they would have like a Hawaiian thing, and we all get together and we had pictures taken, and a lot of the people from the church, we all get together in the gymnasium and stuff like that. They always had picnics and stuff like that.
What were some of the different services that you attended at that church? I imagine you went to fellowship on Sunday, but were there other services that you would attend to, or other study sessions? Or?
Yeah, there was Bible studies on Tuesday nights, and prayers on, I think it was Monday and Wednesday nights and stuff like that.
All right, so Bible study Tuesday nights, prayers Mondays and Wednesday nights.
Yeah.
Did I get that right?
Right.
Okay. And in addition to the Bible studies through the church, would you sometimes get together with the Garcias?
Yes, we go to their house on Thursday. I think it was Thursday nights to do Bible study.
Okay. Would they ever come over to your house?
At that time, to be honest, I don't know. I can't remember.
Okay.
I know we did it a lot at their house in Manchester when they moved out.
I'd like to be specific about some of the other service things that you did, and I want to ask you about your involvement in those with Brandon. Did you do any sort of service down for nursing homes in Massachusetts?
Every Monday we would go to, with Brandon, to the nursing home and with Mother Mackenzie and other ministers to talk to the elderly and pray with them and stuff like that.
And so Brandon would go with you?
Yes, so we pick him up. Jeff and I would pick him up every Monday and take him with us.
Every Monday. How did you learn that Garcia was going to be doing some work over at Mark's house?
Mark needed some painting done, I guess, and Garcia did that on the side for extra money. Okay. So he did painting there.
Did you ever go over to Mark's house to see the work that Garcia was doing?
Not right away, no.
Eventually?
Eventually, yeah.
What floor was he working on in the house?
Well, it's a split level, so it was on the second floor.
The second floor? Okay. And how long has Mark lived in that house? Do you know? Or maybe let me strike that question and rephrase it a different way. How many different years have you been going over to that house for family events, graduations, things like that?
Oh, a long time.
Long time?
Yeah.
Okay. So you know the layout fairly well,
yes.
The second floor and then down in the basement?
Yeah.
And before, well, when did you last see Brandon before that Tuesday afternoon, October 1st? When was the last time you saw Brandon before that day?
I'm assuming Monday, because we picked him up to go to, we used to go every Monday to the nursing home in Lowell.
I want to talk with you for a couple of minutes now about that Tuesday morning and what led to that Tuesday afternoon on October 1st, 2019. At some point that day, did you get a call from your granddaughter, Danielle?
Yes.
Okay. And without going into exactly what she told you, what did you try to do after you hung up the phone with her?
I think I had my husband with me. I can't remember, but he had fallen down the stairs prior to that, and he hurt his shoulder, so he came with me to check on, to see where Garcia and Brandon were.
Okay.
We got to the house, excuse me, and I rang the doorbell and went to the front. It was locked, so I went around the back. Nothing. Everything was locked up. And I called Danielle.
Okay. So I want to kind of backtrack a little bit. So you got a call from Danielle after you hung up with her. And when you say he hit his shoulder, I imagine that he is your husband.
Yes.
Right, Jeff?
I'm sorry, yeah.
That's okay. And so you said you both went over. Which house did you go to again?
Mark's house.
Mark's house. And couldn't get inside at all?
No. Doors were locked.
Who were some of the people that you tried to call on the phone to find out what was going on?
I had called Patty, and I asked Patty, have you heard from Garcia? And she says, no, sometimes he shuts the phone off or whatever when he's painting and he's busy, so he doesn't answer the phone.
When you called Garcia, or when you had called him in the past, would he typically pick up the phone?
Oh, I wouldn't call him when he was working, so no.
Okay.
No.
All right. So you said that you talked with Patty. You called Patty that day after you got the call from Danielle.
Yeah.
All right. So when you went over to the house and you couldn't get inside, you said the doors were locked. Who did you call then?
I called Danielle back.
Okay.
And I says, nobody's answering. She says, I'll be right over, wait for me. And I says, well, I can't wait right now because my husband was hurting, so I brought him back home. And then I came back, and I pulled in, and then she came from behind me.
She came behind you, okay.
Excuse me.
There should be some water right there.
Yeah, I got it right here.
Okay. So she came behind you. Did you pull? You came right up the driveway.
Garcia's car was there, and then my car and Danielle's.
It made
Garcia's
it worse.
car,
Made it
your
worse.
car, and you said Danielle's. Did Danielle have anybody with her in her
She
car?
had her 3 babies.
Okay. And how young are we talking about here?
3 years ago. Hey. I can't
I was thinking about car seats. Are we thinking about car seats that face the back or the
yeah,
front?
car seats, yeah. I think Natalie is 7, so she was like 5, 6, 5, but they were little. They were babies.
When you and Danielle were there, what did Danielle try to do to get attention? Try to get inside, or
She tried to get in, and then I think she called her dad to find out where the key was. But she tried ringing the doorbell, knocking on it like I did, and then she went around the back, and they were both still locked. And we walked a little bit to the front, and you could see there was a light on in one of the bedrooms. And she had pebbles or something she was throwing at the window to see if they would, nothing.
Still no response?
Still no response, no.
Now, when you saw her doing that, where were you?
I was in the driveway watching her kids, because, yeah.
Okay. Yes, you may. Thank you.
I'm sorry.
What are you showing me?
This is a very noisy courtroom. I'm going to turn it down just in the quiet bits here.
My understanding with no objection that these are going to be full exhibits. Specifically, exhibits number 9, 10, 11, 12, 14, and 15. So that's 9, 10, 11, 12, 14, and 15.
No objection.
That's correct.
Okay, they're admitted. Thank you. May be displayed to the jury.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mrs. Pistana, I'm going to show you a couple of different exhibits, and then I'll put them up on the big screen and ask you a few more questions, okay? All right. These are all pictures. I'm going to show you State's Exhibit 9. Do you recognize that driveway?
Yeah, that's Mark's driveway.
Okay. And I'm going to show you State's Exhibit 10. Whose house is that?
Mark's.
And State's Exhibit 11, kind of looking up a front walkway, would you agree?
Mm-hmm.
All right, whose house is that?
Mark's house.
State's Exhibit 12.
Mark's house.
Okay, is that the front door or the back door?
That's the front door.
Okay. State's Exhibit 14. Is this the side of the same
side
house?
of the house, yeah.
Okay. And a moment ago, you said that there was a light on in one of the windows that Danielle was throwing something, I think you said pebbles at.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you see that window there?
Right here. Yeah.
All right. We'll put that on the screen in just a moment. And exhibit number 15, which part of the house is this?
That's the back side of the house.
That's the back side.
Yeah.
I'm going to leave these here.
Okay.
Put it up on the big screen, but I'm going to leave these here in case you need to get closer for more detail.
Okay.
I'm going to go ahead and put on the screen first State's Exhibit 9 that we looked at. Excuse me. Apologize. State's Exhibit 10. We just looked at this a moment ago. You said this is the front of Mark's house, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And just so we're kind of orientating ourselves, the driveway for that house, is that over on the right-hand side of this picture?
Yeah.
Right-hand side? Okay. Now going to State's Exhibit 9. This is the driveway?
The driveway.
Okay. And you said that you parked your car when you came in. You said there was Garcia's car, Danielle's car, and yours. Were you just kind of lined up in a row going down the driveway, or side by side?
No. Up and down.
Up and down?
Yeah.
Okay. Now going to State's Exhibit 11. Again, is this the walkway to the front of the house, I believe you said?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Those bushes, about how high are those bushes?
They're high.
They're high?
I'm short, but they're high.
All right. And then leading to State's Exhibit, State's Exhibit 14. This is the left side of the house that you talked about?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You pointed to the window, and I'm going to go ahead and stand up here for you. You pointed to the window a moment ago. There's a left and the right window one. You said there was I can see you pointing with your finger to the right. This one here?
Yeah.
That's the window
because it was facing the house, the front of the house.
Okay. The one that Danielle was throwing pebbles at.
Yeah.
Now moving along to State's Exhibit 12. Is this the front door that you had knocked on?
Yes.
I see on here on this particular door, and let me approach you with that a little closer. On the front of that door in the center, is that a knocker?
Yes, it is.
There? Okay.
Yeah.
And is there any other way to, besides knocking or using the knocker, is there anything else that you can use to get somebody's attention?
The doorbell.
Okay.
But I didn't use the knocker. It's too high up, so I banged on the door.
You banged on the door. Okay. Did you try the doorbell at all? Everybody's doorbell is a little bit different. I know the one in my house is blaringly loud. When you rang that doorbell, could you hear it ringing while you were standing outside?
To be honest with you, I don't remember.
Okay.
I don't remember.
And then showing you State's Exhibit 15. Is this the back of the house?
Back of the house.
You stated that you would try to get in through the back door. How do we get through the back door? How do we
Going up those stairs.
The stairs on the left-hand side?
Right, and I tried to open up the door, but that door was locked.
Locked. So at this point, had your phone calls to Garcia, had he picked up at all? Had he answered the phone at all?
No.
Okay. And I believe you were talking a little bit before. You said that Danielle had called somebody and then was able to find a key. Do you know who she called?
Her dad. She called her dad.
She called her dad?
Yeah.
Did you see where she got the key from?
I wasn't looking. I was paying attention to the kids in the car.
Okay. And at that point, who went inside once she got the key?
She went in first.
Okay. And where did you stay?
In the driveway with the kids.
Okay. When Danielle first went inside, how was she acting? What was her, like we would call it, the tone or the demeanor of her voice? What did she sound like to you?
She came out horrified. And she ran by me, and I said to her, "What's the matter? What's going on?" And she just, shook her. She was shaking. So when she came out...
And who did you call then?
Who did I call? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
It's background evidence. So,
thank you.
Next question.
When she came out of the house, was there a phone call that was made by anybody?
She called.
Who did she call?
I think it was 911. But to be honest with you, I can't remember.
Okay. Do you know if at some point 911 was called?
Yeah.
Okay. You said she came out. Go ahead.
she came, I remember her coming out, being frantic, and she was trying to dial 911. So when I saw the look on her face, I ran in the house. I wanted to see what was wrong.
You said before it's a split-level house, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. So when you first came through the door, where did you go? I see your hands pointed out, though, right?
Yeah.
I understand with no objection that these can be made a full exhibit, State's Exhibit 2 and State's Exhibit 3.
Okay, for a minute, maybe show the jury.
So Mrs. Pisano, when you go inside showing this jury State's Exhibit 2, are these the stairs that you go up?
Yes.
And which way do you turn when you get to the top of those stairs?
I remember getting to the top of the step, and I was yelling, Brandon Garcia, where are you? Can I take a cough thing?
Go right ahead.
I have a couple more if you need.
Take the whole box.
Cough drop?
Oh, I just took one. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Get a brand sponsorship name.
Tom, we've got to do some administrative things anyway. Your Honor, it's my understanding with the defendant's agreement that State's Exhibit 24 would have ID striking vehicles.
I'm sorry, I believe it's 74.
I'm sorry, 74.
74. Okay, 74, full exhibit.
When you got to the top of the stairs, did you turn to your right and look there?
I stood at the top of the steps, and I turned to the right because it's like a little living room.
So let me show you State's Exhibit 74.
Yeah, that room. Yeah.
That's the room?
I turned and I yelled again, Garcia, Brandon, where are you? Then I looked in the kitchen, which was straight ahead.
Okay. And I'm going back to State's Exhibit 2. When you say straight ahead, is that
That's
room at the top?
go straight up, yeah. Going into the room.
Was there anybody in that room?
No, there was nobody there.
So then when you turn to your left, make sure you State's Exhibit 3.
That hall, right. I walked down that hall yelling again, Garcia, Brandon, where are you? Is everything okay? And I got to the end, and Brandon was right at the door in a fetal position, going back and forth, going back and forth. And I said, Brandon, you okay? I tapped him on the back. Brandon, what's up? You okay? He didn't answer. He just kept going back and forth.
Did you hear? Were there any noises?
Nothing. No noises.
Have you ever seen him like that before?
No.
What happened next?
So when he was in the fetal position going back and forth, I kept saying, Brandon, you okay? And I said, where's Garcia? And the minute I said that, they had furniture in the middle of the room, because Garcia, I was assuming, was painting in that room.
Okay.
I saw one leg up, and I walked around.
Around what or who?
The furniture. And he was leaning on his back. And there was blood everywhere. And I went, oh my God. So I stepped over him and I ran down the hall, ran outside. And I think I called my husband and I said, he's gone.
When you got outside, did you stay with Danielle and the kids, or did you go somewhere else?
No, I stayed right there.
And did the officers come pretty quickly after that?
The officer came up to me and he says,
well, hold on, ma'am. I don't want to go on to what he says.
Okay.
I just want to stick with what you saw and you said. I'm sorry.
I was all upset.
When you were in the house, did you see anybody else in there?
No. No.
At some point, did you see Brandon Castiglione come out of the house with the police officer?
Yeah.
Did he say anything to you?
No.
Just a moment, please. Mrs. Pistano. Sorry, I've just got 2 more questions for you. I apologize. You said that when you went into the room and you went around and you saw Mr. Garcia, you stepped over something or someone.
I stepped over Brandon.
He was still there in the middle of the room?
Yeah.
Brandon in the courtroom today?
Yeah.
You point out where he's sitting?
He's sitting right there.
Thank you, ma'am. Your Honor, please reflect that the witness has identified the defendant.
No objection.
Okay. Good job. Thank you. Mrs. Pistano, thank you very much for answering my questions. I don't have any further ones right now. I believe defense counsel will have a few questions for you. Okay.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Are you okay to go forward, or do you need a moment?
No, I'm okay.
Okay. I do have a few questions for you. You spoke to the police that very day, correct?
Yeah.
And back when you talked to the police, it's been over 4 years since that day, correct?
Yeah.
Fair to say that your memory of what happened was better back that day when you talked to them, the very day this happened, than it is here today?
No, some of the things I remember.
I understand that you remember some things. I'm not saying you don't remember things. But would your memory have been fresher back then?
Yeah.
And you were being honest when you talked to the police back then.
Mm-hmm.
You were telling them what you knew. I'm sorry, you have to answer out loud. I see.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes.
That's okay. You were telling them what you heard.
Yes.
And what you saw.
Yes.
And what you knew.
Yes.
You were telling them the truth.
Yes.
You were telling them all of that to the best of your ability.
Yes.
Okay. Now, what you actually told the police that very day was that when you went into the house, you saw that Brandon was praying. Isn't that right?
Praying?
Praying.
In a fetal position like this.
Yes.
I'm not saying anything.
Okay. You had seen him pray in a position like that before, correct?
In church.
Okay. So you'd seen him do that in church?
Yes.
Okay. And you actually told the police that he was speaking in tongues?
I don't remember that.
Okay.
I don't.
No, that's okay. I happen to have a transcript of that interview with the police. If I showed you a portion of that transcript, would that help you remember what you
Probably.
Page 43. Now, just ask that you read that to yourself. I'd ask that you read that paragraph and see if that helps you remember what
this one here?
Yes.
Okay. Read it out loud?
No, to yourself.
Oh, okay.
Please.
Okay.
So what you told the police was that Brandon was mumbling and speaking in tongues, correct?
Right. Yes.
And you were being honest with the police when you talked to them?
Yes.
So that's what you saw that day. I'm sorry, I see you now.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes.
It's okay, I'm not trying to be difficult, but we do take it on.
Okay, yeah, I'm sorry.
That's okay. I can always remind you. And you said you'd seen Brandon in the fetal position praying like that at church before.
Yes.
That was something he would do frequently.
At the church, yes.
At the church. So that wasn't unusual for him to be in that position when he prayed at the church.
Yes, right.
And I believe you've described it as he shuts the world off when he's praying?
Yes.
And when he's praying, he doesn't respond to anything else?
Right.
You knew that about him?
Yes.
I believe you've also described him as saying that he was always praying? I mean, that's something he did very frequently, right?
At church, yes.
Okay. Now, I want to ask you about when you first went into the house. You described here today that you patted Brandon on the back and talked to him and said, you know, something to the effect of, "Are you okay? What's going on?" Something like that.
Yeah.
That's actually not what you told the police back on the very day that this happened.
Oh, okay.
Let me show you what you told the police and see if it helps refresh your memory about what happened.
All right.
I'm just going to object to that part of the question, saying that I'm going to show. Can we approach him?
Sure.
Okay, so that was a little bit improper the way he brought that up. He should have said, "Do you recall what you told the police?" And she would say, "Yes," and then he could say, you know, or if she says no, she said he would have been able to say, "If I were to show you your statement that you gave to the police that day, would that refresh your recollection?" And if she says yes, then she'd say, then he has can approach and say, "I'm showing you this," and it will reflect or refresh your recollection. Right now, he's just saying, "I'm just going to show you this because you lied." So it's like improper. It's like impeaching the witness, but it's not quite the right way to do it. There's a way he can get this in. This isn't like he's not going to have to skip this part, but if he does it right, he can get it in. Was there bad blood between the families? Not that I know of. I haven't heard anything about that in the story. This is her grandson on the fence, yes.
So that very day, the detective asked you if you tried to talk to Brandon or have any conversation when you went into the house. And your answer was no, you did not.
You mean a conversation with him? I just asked him if he was okay.
He said, did you try to talk to Brandon? Did you say what happened, or was there any conversation? That's what the officer asked you.
Okay.
And your response was no.
Right.
Okay. So you told the officer you didn't talk to Brandon at all. You didn't ask him what was going on or if he was okay. That's what you told the officer that day.
Right. Okay.
And you were being honest with the officer that day.
Yeah.
You were telling him what happened.
Yeah.
Being truthful. And again, it's been over 4 years. Your memory was better just a couple hours after this happened.
Objection, Your Honor. It's been less than 4 years. Counsel can say almost 4 years, but it's been over 4 years.
The
jury can do the math between October.
I apologize. I miscounted. It's been I think a little over 3.5 years, if I'm doing the math correctly. It's been a while. Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
Okay. And you talked to the police the very day this all happened?
I guess.
And you told them what happened, to the best of your ability?
To the best of my ability, yeah.
You were being honest with them?
Yes.
I believe you said some things a little while ago about talking about when Brandon was brought out of the house.
Okay.
Do you remember Attorney Agati asking you some questions about that a little earlier?
Okay.
And you basically described that Brandon walked right by you.
Right.
And at that point, Brandon looked solemn.
Yes, he did.
And he did not say anything?
No, not that I remember, no.
Okay. Now, back on October 1st of 2019, that's the day we're talking about, Brandon had a cell phone. Correct?
Correct.
You knew he had a cell phone?
Uh-huh.
And you knew he carried that phone with him?
Yes.
That he always had that on him?
As far as I know, yeah.
Your Honor, may we approach?
Yes, ma'am.
Lots of sidebars in this one. Little Miss, I don't know, but if you keep asking, I'm going to time you out. I don't know. I don't know what happened. Accidents happen. I don't know. It's in the past. You're not timed out right now. Okay, we're not supposed to hear this, so I'm turning the audio down just a little bit. It's not supposed to be up, and we don't want to hear that. Okay. Can somebody give a quick rundown on this trial? Thanks. Liz Jane. Yes, the defendant, the grandson of the witness who we're seeing on the screen right now, the defendant is accused of shooting and killing a pastor or a preacher from his church. There's the defendant there in the white shirt. His name is Brandon Castiglione or something like that. Luis Garcia is the decedent. He got shot.
Schedule, and I forgot because normally I start these trials in the morning. This one started after my drug court session. So the way the trial flow goes is we start usually every morning at 9 a.m. sharp. Normally I have some things I have to deal with on other matters at 8:30. So we start at 9, then we go for a mid-morning break, an hour for lunch, and then we and sometimes it's at 12, sometimes it's at 12:15. It depends on where we are. And then a mid-afternoon break, and then we try to conclude a little bit before 4 because I have to have everybody out of here by 4:15. And she has to be done by 4. So,
All your fault.
it's all his fault. No, it's a convenience for everybody. So we're going to stop a little bit before 4 every day, and now is a good time to break, which means, ma'am, you'll have to be back tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock to resume your testimony. And ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to excuse you now. Do not do any independent research. Do not discuss the case amongst yourselves. Do not pay any attention to any media. Resist the social media interaction about this case. And we'll see you all tomorrow morning. Thank you. All right.
I'm going to turn down the.
Thank you.
I'm going to turn down the volume here. Okay. We're hoping that the audio gets fixed tomorrow. I think one of the problems is they have all the microphones turned on. Like every microphone is turned on. And so it's just incredibly painful. Every sound in the courtroom is picked up from a million different ways. Also, all the microphones are set to auto adjust so that when it's quiet, they keep turning up the volume.
Your own cross-examination means that you are not allowed to discuss your testimony with anybody until we resume tomorrow morning at 9, okay?
Okay, yeah.
All right. And I'll make sure I have plenty of cough drops for you, okay?
Oh,
Thank you. Counsel, do we need to discuss anything before we adjourn for the day?
No, Your Honor.
Thank you. See you tomorrow morning. Thank you.
Will do.
All right. There we go. So we're done for the day. We're going to finish every day by 4, which is just awesome. So it's going to be a short day. This was a very short day. It started in the afternoon because the judge had some other stuff in the morning. Interesting trial. I'm hoping the audio gets a little better. I'm trying to do the best I can on it. The sound is so bad. If it does not get better, we might be looking for other trials. It's painful. I realize we can hear everything in this trial, which is a good thing, but it's a little rough. Let's see. Did we just cover murder or all sorts? We cover all sorts. We also, 2 trials ago, we covered a civil case with Gwyneth Paltrow, Amber, and that was the first civil trial we've covered. We probably won't cover too many of those. Those are just where one person is suing another person. There's no jail time on the line. It's usually just for a financial settlement of some sort. But starting tomorrow morning, 9 a.m., Goodman Law Firm. Sorry for those that are farther west in the country. It's going to be early, but it's going to be a short day, so you'll get your evenings free. Good news is we can hear everything. The bad news is we can also hear everything. Eddie, you're right. I'm squeezing the color out of the cow. I've been so frustrated with the audio. There's a few things that are a problem. First of all, the iris on the camera lenses are too high. They're too far open. They're letting in so much light that the white on the shirt of the defendant exceeds the broadcast range for television. So it looks blindingly white, even though it's a little bit yellow because the color balance is off. The cameras are not color matched, so if you see the defendant from the camera in the back of the courtroom, the one that's filming the judge, he looks like he has a white shirt. If you see the defendant from the front, looking from the judge's bench back, he looks like he has a yellow shirt. The brightnesses are different. The iris being wide open causes a very narrow depth of field, which means that it has to focus on very different things. If somebody walks in the foreground or steps towards you, they become out of focus very quickly. And it's also set to autofocus, so it's jumping back and forth, and it feels like you're sort of, it's like yo-yo with your eyes. Anyway, so I'm going to hop on a plane, according to Ashley, and go fix them, get that sorted out. Yes, all this is done by the lowest bidder. No, just kidding. This is provided by probably a team that's putting this on, a contracted team, and you sort of get what you get sometimes. Don't pop the cash cow. This is very durable cow. This cow has been it's been squeezed and crushed, and it's surviving. I do a little TV and audio, so yeah, it bugs me. I'm trying to fix it. We are calling it quits for the day. Let's see. I don't know where the Stauks trial, but if anybody wants to watch a full interview on Fox 31, Gannon Stauks' mother speaks for 24 minutes and 17 seconds, or 17 hours after the conviction. I have not watched that, but if you're very welcome to follow that. I was not following that. Okay. The grandma's doing great, and here's the thing. I don't think she realizes that she is testifying against her son, but she is. She was the one that found the body and found him, and so she's testifying. The state is using her testimony against her son. I don't know if she thinks her grandson is guilty or not. I'm not sure what she feels about that, but she is testifying here. Let's see. All right. Lots happening over on Brandy's channel. Lots of news in the Lori Vallow trial. Apparently that's going to be live streamed finally for the verdict. The state has rested over there, which when the state rests, that means the state's done putting on their case. But before they rested, the last thing they did, and thank you, Kay Keaty, for these updates, is I said, oh, by the way, Judge, we'd like to amend to the charges. This is pretty cool. Look. That shows how they're getting it to us. Clear. Okay, anyway. TVU, I'm not a big fan of that brand. I would rather do Live View than TVU, but anyway, that's why the signal keeps cutting out. Anyway, so before the state rested in the Lori Vallow trial, they went to the judge. So by the way, we're going to change the charges a little bit. We'd like to change what she is being charged with this late in the trial. The judge was not happy, but they can. The judge granted it and made a slight modification to one of the charges, and I'll let Brandy and JT cover that on their show, so I won't go too much into that. But yeah, there are quite a few shootings. Thank you, Sandra, for pointing this out. a relative of the victim in this case, 12 days later, went over and shot up the church where the father of the defendant was getting married. Do I have that right? Shot 3 people. They recovered. He is, facing charges for that now. But yeah, so this is a fun one. You need a cash cow subscription. I need like a weekly cow that I can just disposable. Throw it away. We're done. Boom. So, their show's gonna be great tonight. All right, we've had a fun day. Yes, Mrs. Beasy, that's right. This is just crazy. It sounds like a revenge shooting in the church at a wedding, or at a wedding that was right next to a funeral. There's just some crazy facts in this one. And I'm waiting for the pieces to fit together a little bit. Was there bad beef between them, or why would he just shoot a guy who was decorating the house? Nanny Apple, he's saying he didn't do it. He's saying it was somebody else who grabbed his gun and used his gun. And yes, and he pistol whipped the groom. Oh my goodness. Church services are wild over there. Just crazy. Going to love these early days. Jamie, what are we going to do with the rest of the day? It's only 4 o'clock here. The sun's still up. There are things I can do. That was the same day of the funeral of the victim at the same church. Oh, my goodness. The funeral of the victim. I'm not laughing. I'm not laughing. You're laughing. The funeral of the victim, Luis, was the same day of the shooting, probably a couple hours apart. Oh, man. It was Maria. That's it. Diet Coke Mama gets a break. Bye, everyone. Have a happy evening. Thank you for being here. Good to have you here. Okay. I said bye 5 minutes ago. We're still here. We need to wrap up. We'll do that. I won't keep you waiting. You guys, when we get an early break, we need to capitalize on that and go ahead and take our day and do all the things we need to do. So, note to self, no church in New Hampshire. So the son missed his dad's funeral. Sounds like that. Man. All right. Good stuff. Good stuff. This is going to be a fun case. It is starting slowly, but we'll pick up. We're going to have some amazing parts in it as well. They always seem to have them. So tonight when you go home, please hug the people you love. Smile at someone and make their day just a little bit better. And please stay safe till we go live again. We'll be live at 9 o'clock in the morning, starting the same trial. Grandma's going to be on the stand. Hopefully she has a lot of fisherman's friend. I hope her cough gets a little better. It sounds like she's on the mend. I don't think she's sick. It might be something persistent, but it's probably going to be short testimony. I don't see a lot of these witnesses going very long, so we might just be tearing through this. It's slated for last for about 2 weeks or into the second week. Not sure if it'll go that long, but we'll see. Brandy says, thanks for covering a great show as always. Tons happening, so I got to go prep for tonight. See y'all this evening. It's going to be awesome, Brandy. Thank you very much. We'll see everybody. Have a great night. Bye.
Don't go.